Let's see. Got everybody. Who are we missing? Oh, we're looking good.
And you're doing the roll call, right, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am, I will when we get started.
Okie doke.
Yep.
Just making sure.
Yep. Hey, Ralph, glad you can join us.
Yeah, I'm glad that everything worked out.
Okie doke. Just making sure. Hey, Flo.
Hello, how's everybody?
Oh,
Good, hello.
good.
Good.
Amy, Harvey, I should probably get your cell phone number because I was trying to text you that we couldn't get on and I don't have it. So eventually you'll send it to me. I had to call Maurice to come tell you. So that's a little archaic, but.
I had to ignore him while I was trying to work it out. But we got it worked out. And like I said, sorry for the delay.
Ooh.
I knew you were busy. A lot of attendees this evening.
The Gov Studio crew is starting the intro video, so in about 2 minutes,
Okay. There's Alan.
we'll be able to start.
Good job. If y'all can mute yourself to start, that would be helpful. Thank you.
But you want us on voice for the roll call?
When I ask you to voice up, yeah. Thank you. There's just too much feedback when we have too many mics open.
And, we don't want to have happen what happened at the Supreme Court hearings today.
Oh.
Somebody flushed.
Oh no. Oh no. Ooh, I'll have to remember that. Mute before doing all certain things. Amy, will you give me a thumbs up when we're ready to go? You're muted.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
About 1 minute.
Ooh, running a little behind. Okay, sorry. Michael, do you have the list of people signed up to speak?
I have the one that Amy sent out a little while ago, yes.
Thank you.
I don't know if there have been any additions or updates or anything.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 6th special meeting of the Chapel Hill Town Council. We're happy to have those of you joining us online or streaming or by phone. We know these are unusual times. We know that we're all adjusting to this new way of meeting and conducting the town's business. I will say that We have an update on legislation for doing virtual meetings from the governor signing the order in that allows us to have these special kinds of meetings so that we can continue doing town business. There are a few changes we will have to incorporate. One of them will be a roll call of all council members at the start of the meeting. And then for every vote we may take, I'm going to ask council members to raise their hand when they say aye, and I'll call out their names as ayes, and to raise their hands if they're voting nay, and I will call out their names as they say nay. We're going to try that approach and see how it works for us. So I'm going to get us started with that first roll call. So I'm going to call your name. If you'll mute yourself on and say you're here or whatever, that would be great. I'm going to go down. We start with Mayor Pro Tem Michael Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Jess Anderson.
Hello.
Councilmember Alan Boyncey.
Here.
Councilmember Hongbin Gu. Hongbin, can you tell us you're here?
She put in the chat that her connection was
Her
unstable.
communication's bad. So let the record reflect that she is participating, but that she's having a bad internet connection. Councilmember Tai Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Ryan.
Here.
And Councilmember Karen Stegman.
Here.
We're also joined by our town manager, Maurice Jones, our clerks, our attorney, Ralph Carpanos, our assistant town manager, Flo Miller, and several other members of our wonderful staff. Again, we'll be trying this out and learning as we go and incorporating things that help us do better. I have several announcements, but first I want to ask the council to join me in thanking our incredible staff for all they are doing to keep us safe and all they're doing to keep the town running. Council, show your appreciation. Aren't they? Thank you. Big thank yous from our council.
That's awesome. Thank you all very much.
If y'all are willing to take a picture of your thank you card and send it, you can text it into me. We'll post it out there as well. So, and share our thanks with all that you are doing. We know our staff's working tirelessly and putting themselves out there to help keep us safe and keep us functioning. So thank you. All right. Another few announcements we've got going here, and then we'll start with the protocols for the meeting. We are celebrating Porch, our wonderful community organization's 10-year birthday. It's one of our nonprofits is doing an amazing job getting food out to the people in our community and coordinating with all our other food partners. We want to congratulate and thank the founders who started this organization and all the volunteers, but Christine Cotton, Debbie Horowitz, and Susan Romaine, and they have been working tirelessly through all this and tirelessly for the last 10 years, and they have helped us feed so many people. They've got volunteers in over 150 different neighborhoods and feeding people in our community. They have provided over 3 million in hunger relief to Chapel Hill and Carrboro community. And so in recognition and gratitude for this amazing effort, I am declaring Saturday to be Porch Day in Chapel Hill and urge everyone to continue supporting Porch, being part of Porch, and just so grateful for having this incredible organization in our community. So thank you to everyone. On an interesting note, the Air National Guard flyover salute to cities, hospitals, and food banks is going to be happening this week. It's going to be a Operation American Resolve with flyovers across the state. Tomorrow, they're going to be in our area, flying over UNC Chapel Hill Hospital at 11:39 and the Durham VA plus Duke University Hospital 11:42. So we encourage people to go outside during that time. It's pretty spectacular to watch. I've seen other pictures come in from seeing this amazing salute to our heroes. So please go out there. The Council Committee on Economic Sustainability will meet virtually this Friday, May 8th at 8 a.m. Topics on the agenda include a planning update and discussion of the proposed East Rosemary parking deck, and information's available on our town website. We'd love to have you join us virtually or watch us. And the Environmental Sustainability Board will meet on Tuesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. also virtually. For a full list of any meetings out there that we are having, please go to our town website. We're trying to keep the calendar update. It is evolving, so please check it frequently because we have to keep making adjustments as we figure out how to get all these boards meeting virtually and open to people to participate. So I'm going to give you a food check-in now. All right. Last week, Food for Students distributed over 144,000 meals total. 144,000, guys. They've added 2 more sites. Tomorrow, they're going to start distributing weekend meal boxes at all their sites. And today, the town and Porch distributed to over 543 families at the food bank distribution. I don't know if you noticed that the line was backed all the way back up to Eastgate. Table distributed 662 bags of healthy food last week, and Meals on Wheels distributed over 1,000 meals to seniors last Thursday. IFC is continuing to feed lunch to about 100 folks and dinner to about 70 in the community kitchen. And the food pantry is providing bags of groceries as well. We're also providing to students on campus who are here with us. And this is all out of generosity from our community. And the need is going to be ongoing, folks. So please find a way to plug in. We had Giving Tuesday this week. We're going to need to continue to providing for families as we recover. Some families will recover faster than others, but there's going to be a continual need in here. We also know that OWASA has seen a 70% increase in past due accounts. So the OWASA Care to Share program provides funding to help those people pay their water bills. OWASA is a community water program, so they depend on the revenues coming in. If you're willing to do the Care to Share program, it's easy to sign up. We're asking people to click and do what they can, but we'd like to see if people could do $10 a month on their water bill to help during this crisis, to help those and to help our OWASA community stay strong. So Care to Share, plug in, and I've got a little challenge going on with Mayor Lavelle. So come on, Chapel Hill, let's see if we can be more Care to Share. So that's going on. All right, we're gonna start up with an update on our COVID response. Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are going to take a few minutes to provide you with an update on the town's response to COVID-19. We're going to also provide an overview of phase 1 of reopening in our state and talk a little bit about the coming weeks and months ahead. This has been a particularly active week at the state level, and we've highlighted a few of those key updates on this slide. The North Carolina Department on Health and Human Services is now tracking key metrics as outlined in the governor's phased reopening plan. Metrics such as testing capacity, PPE supplies, contact tracing, and cases by zip code. Governor Roy Cooper signed 2 coronavirus relief bills into law on Monday. HB 1043 allocates nearly $1.6 billion of federal funding from the CARES Act for health, education, small businesses, and more. Senate Bill 704 contains key policy changes, such as an extension of the driver's license and registration deadlines, and waiving interest on tax payments normally due in April. Earlier today, we received notification that the process to move residents out of the IFC shelter and into hotels is proceeding. Orange County expects all of the residents will be relocated by 5 p.m. on Monday. And yesterday, Governor Cooper announced that the state will move into phase 1 of reopening at 5 p.m. this Friday, and the phase is expected to remain in place until at least 5 p.m. on May 22nd. I will now turn the presentation over to Kelly Drayton to provide details on what to expect under phase 1 of the state's reopening. Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about phase 1 and what our community can expect during the next few weeks. While phase 1 does ease some restrictions, it's important to know that the stay-at-home order does remain in effect, and most of our current restrictions remain in place under phase 1. Restaurants and bars will remain closed for dine-in service, but can continue to provide takeout and delivery. Personal care and grooming businesses such as barbershops and hair salons will remain closed. And likewise, fitness and entertainment facilities will also remain closed under phase 1. Phase 1 also maintains restrictions pertaining to congregate living facilities such as nursing homes. And finally, mass gatherings are still prohibited under phase 1, and state officials continue to encourage North Carolinians to wear cloth face coverings when outside the home in situations where physical distancing is not possible. So although there are many restrictions that will still apply in phase 1, there are some key changes that we wanted to highlight. While the statewide stay-at-home order is still in effect, phase 1 does increase the number of reasons that people are allowed to leave the home. So not only can they now leave their home for non-essential goods and services, such as trips to a sporting goods store or a bookshop, but phase 1 also specifically allows for people to gather in groups of up to 10 outdoors while maintaining the recommended social distancing requirements. Another key change in phase 1 is that it eliminates the distinction between essential and non-essential businesses and allows most retail stores to open at 50% capacity with frequent cleaning and social distancing measures in place. The exception to this are those businesses that were previously mentioned on the last slide. Under phase 1, childcare centers are also now open for all working families, and state parks and trails may reopen. However, they're subject to gathering limitations. I will now hand it back over to Mr. Jones to talk a little bit about our look forward.
Thank you, Kelly. As we look towards the weeks and months ahead, our staff continues to plan for our reopening and working with our partners to not only begin reopening, but also recovery efforts. As we mentioned under the governor's executive order, phase 1 will last until May 22nd at least. If our state continues to meet public health metrics, the governor will consider moving the state to phase 2, which would lift the stay-at-home order, increase the number of people allowed at gatherings, and allow for a limited opening of key businesses like restaurants and bars. Phase 3 will come in at least 4 to 6 weeks after phase 2 and would allow increased capacity at restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues. And this phase will further increase the number of people allowed at gatherings. However, it would keep in place rigorous restrictions on nursing homes and other congregate care settings. Testing and tracing capabilities along with key metric trends must continue to move in the right direction for each one of these phases to advance. Our town departments have crafted draft plans for a phased reopening in coordination with the governor's orders, a coordination with the governor's orders, and also working with our partners in the region. We will move slowly, preparing for a phased increase in services and the reopening of our facilities. And we will continue to rely on the guidance of health professionals and the CDC as we move forward. As we all know, the safety of our community and our employees are our top priority as we begin to reopen and recover. As we begin to relax some of our restrictions and move into this recovery phase, we continue to coordinate with our local partners on long-term planning to ensure that we remain organized and focused on a collaborative approach to reopening and recovery. Recovery units from the town and county have established a detailed recovery structure to guide this long-term process. County staff is exploring the option of engaging a consultant or a third party to help lead this process, recognizing that recovery coordination will be a full-time responsibility in the months to come. And they will also be working with the localities to develop a community group that would help us with this recovery effort as well. And as always, we continue to keep safety, sustainability, and equity at the forefront of our response and recovery efforts. So we thank you for your attention this evening, and we are more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Boynton, followed by Ms. Anderson, and Ms. Gu.
Thank you very much for the update, Manager Jones. I just had a quick follow-up question. And I realize that staff may be in the process of figuring this out right now, but what will phase 1 mean for our town facilities, such as town hall and our parks, et cetera?
Well, our town facilities, all of our town buildings will remain closed in phase 1. There's still some discussion about what would happen in our parks. We'll know more about that in the next 24 hours or so and be able to communicate that out to our community. But we do know that town hall and all of our facilities will be closed. And there may be some limited reopening of portions of our parks, but we're still in the process of discussing that and determining what that would look like.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson and Ms. Gu?
Yeah, thank you for that presentation and for all the work that's been going on. I have a couple questions. I guess first, you're going to predict this one, Maurice, but can you explain what the barrier is this week for getting our shelter residents into the hotel? I mean, we're moving into phase one. And I really do want to say that I know that the town has been working so hard, and particularly Maurice, you have championed this effort. So thank you so much for doing that. And this is not a reflection. This question is not a reflection on my understanding of all the efforts that our town staff has made. And I know that this is a county level decision at this point, but I'm just hoping it's a pointed question, and also wondering if there's anything we can do to move that timeline up or encourage our partners to maybe not worry so much about contracts or where they're going to get reimbursed and just pull the trigger. But if you could give a little more information.
Well, it's my understanding that they were actually, Orange was, and other staff, we were all prepared to see the residents at IFC move before the end of this week. But there was a request actually from IFC to move that to Monday as a result of some staffing needs that they had. So they did, at this point, the request to move to Monday came from IFC. But up to this point, as we explained last week, there were some discussions about contracts and then working through some agreements between IFC and the county. And they were able to get that done in the last day or so. And now it looks like it's going to be Monday before those folks are moved.
So is there any support that we can provide from the town level to bolster the IFC staff so that that can happen more quickly?
Honestly, I've not been part of those discussions. I just found out about that maybe an hour and a half ago. So I'm not sure, but we could certainly have that conversation with them if that would move this process along.
I will defer to my colleagues as well, obviously, but I would love to see us offer whatever staffing support we can to get folks moved. Just knowing that the longer they're there, the longer that the more we're tempting fate on that one.
And we, in one of our calls with IFC earlier today, we did offer that support. There is some other logistical challenges that they're working through. Once they make the move, they have to continue to provide various support services. And so I think that was also another piece, but we did offer support in that way in our last call. That was about 4:30.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for that update. Okay. Well, thank you for all the efforts that have gone into making this happen so far. And I know that it's just frustrating. I did also want to mention that I think we're going to be trying to roll out some efforts to coordinate getting face masks, getting cloth face masks to folks in the community who may desire to wear one, who would like to, I know we're not mandating it, but anybody who wants to have one to protect themselves and also protect people around them, we wanted to make sure that's available to them. So I just wanted to let folks know that we're gonna be working on that to see if we can coordinate getting people who are craftier than I am in and connecting them with people who would like a mask but otherwise can't get one. And I guess my only other kind of piece of feedback is that it seems to me, just talking to folks, that the community feels very concerned and apprehensive about kind of, and I think that it helps to know what phase one means, and that it's not a complete reopening, that there are some kind of minor moves, but I do feel like folks are very apprehensive and concerned and nervous, and that we are maybe a little different than some other places in the state. So any communications that we can put out to help people understand kind of the limitations, and that clearly if things are not moving in the right direction, that we're going to pull back, I think that could help. And then, thinking through how we can make people feel safe within Chapel Hill, I think is going to continue to be something we have to think about. But thank you again for all the efforts and for all the great work.
You're welcome, and thank you for that question. We are without question working on how we will communicate with the public and our own employees about what this reopening looks like. Just a few more decisions need to be made before we really highlight that. But we've tried, for instance, tonight to make sure that folks understood what will be happening and what won't be happening in phase one. And we'll continue to push that message out over the course of the next 3-4 days and into next week as more and more people make their way out and about with phase one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Good and Mr. Wynn?
Okay, well, first I apologize that my computer for some reason had to keep on freeze up. So it seems like now it's okay for me to hear all of you. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you. But
Okay, so the video on my side is completely frozen, but okay, well, I think I can still talk. So my question is, I remember that on March the 25th, when our county announced this stay at home order, that at that time we have a total of 13 cases. And now today, I checked that our county has 230. So I kind of like, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to convince myself, like, why at that time when we have 13 cases, we feel that it's not safe, or we are under a situation that we think we need to close up the activities and commercial activities. And now we are at 230, and then we are opening up. So what kind of message, how do we explain to people, or just answer that simple question of whether or not we're safe and how safe we are? What kind of activities will be warranted by the situation that we are in? Can you just like somehow clarify that or explain what is the situation that we are in, especially given the considerations that we had at the time when we closed it down? I just have a very hard time to convince myself that we are at a situation that's safer than the time we decide to close down.
Well, I think the question you asked is really important as we, as a community and as a state, look at one, the number of cases that we have in our state, and whether or not we've been able to flatten the curve, which was the goal. I think with the state order, the state stay-at-home order, and certainly our own stay-at-home order at this point, the governor feels that a phase one approach is the right approach for our state. That would allow some businesses to open again under some many restrictions, obviously, and so practicing social distancing as well. So, the governor's made that decision. We're all trying to be responsive to how that would work with our own localities. As we mentioned, there's not going to be a ton of change that you're going to see here in Chapel Hill, especially with our own municipal facilities, at least in phase one, and that there still are metrics that have been put in place by the state that we agree with that need to be met in order to move to loosening up more restrictions and allowing more businesses to open, and for other amenities to open, for instance, like some of our facilities, and as we move forward. So we'll be keeping a close eye on those metrics as we move forward as well. And I'm sure the governor's office will as well before making a decision about continuing this reopening plan with the phase two.
I'll throw in there too that talked last night on WRAL with the mayors from Raleigh and Durham. We talked about that if we see that the numbers uptick, or that we see that we're having an increase in anything, we have the right to step in and to ratchet back down. The governor's order made it pretty clear. The Orange leaders, just so you know, we meet almost every day. The governor made it pretty clear that their order superseded ours at this point in time. They're trying to rely on the science and the data, but there's a lot of unknowns. This is a constantly evolving situation. We've got examples from other countries where they loosened some restrictions and had some actually favorable results. And then we've seen some ones that didn't. So this is a constantly evolving situation, and we're doing our best to keep people safe. But we do know there's going to be some pressure valve relief too, because people are starting to get into that mode. So, and able to let people interact safely. People are much better now with understanding what the safety protocols are. People have more supply of equipments. The hospitals have more healthcare options for people and more availability for helping. So we monitor those stats daily, just so you know, and we're trying to make the best decisions going forward. And we do collaborate along with the region, also metro mayors, as we're working towards this, because it's a very different take right now still in the cities versus the rural areas. And the governor has to balance all that. Meanwhile, we need to be helping our community stay safe. So messaging and encouraging people to continue to best practices and stay safe while allowing some healthy activities is the plan for stage one. We're not sure that stage one's only going to last 2 weeks, guys. This is all a learning curve here. So stay tuned for that. All right, Mr. Wynn, and then did anyone else on council have anything? Ms. Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for all that you're doing around this. I had a few quick questions. One was enforcement of when these new businesses are opening and they have to remain at that certain capacity and people have to follow social distancing within those retail spaces. How are we planning on enforcing that? Is that a joint effort with the county? Because I can imagine that's going to be a lot of businesses, and do we have capacity for that?
It would be a joint effort with the county, as it has been up to this point with the stay-at-home order. We are if our officers see folks who are violating the social distancing orders, or the number of folks who are gathered together, their approach has been education first, and to communicate with folks why it's important for them to abide by the restrictions that are in place. I would imagine we will continue to do that. I know Orange County receives complaints, or health department has been receiving complaints. And when they do, they send folks out to talk to businesses and establishments to make sure they understand how important it is to properly social distance. And from what we've heard from the health department, when those complaints have come in and they've gone out and visited those establishments, soon thereafter, they responded with new protocols and procedures that they put in place to help try to keep people safe. So I think our approach, and Chief Blue can certainly weigh in on this, our approach is education first, and then enforcement later if we have repeat offenders who just aren't listening. And Chief, for some reason, we can't hear you.
Nope. I think you muted yourself, Chief.
Still can't hear you.
Unfortunately, still can't hear you, Chief.
Oh.
Okay. I do know that our police department's getting several calls too. And the health department does have the right to shut places down that aren't complying. So there's force behind that if a business or a situation is out of control. So.
Gotcha.
Did you have another question?
Second question was that chart that you had, I think was really effective at just showing or communicating kind of what phase one will mean. Are we translating that into other languages by chance?
We will be,
okay.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Stegman.
Hi, I share a little bit of Hongbin's concerns, and Pam, I hear you about the pressures that the politicians and that Raleigh is under, and I understand why things are evolving this way. But it's concerning to me that we're doing this reopening without any real way to test anybody. So I know that there was an encouraging jump in the number of tests in North Carolina yesterday. So I'm hoping that as supplies are going to be more available, but is there anything that the town can do to increase testing in Orange County?
No, the holdup, unfortunately, is the supplies for the test. They're still working on that. The state's received some more, but we heard from UNC hospitals about they're waiting on the swabs, and they will increase testing as much as they can. The health department's only capable of testing a certain amount per day right now as well. So they're the ones doing the testings. I know a Walgreens opened up in North Durham for testing, but they're only testing people who actually are showing symptoms of some
Symptomatic.
sort. They're not doing random, they're not allowing other tests because they don't have enough tests to cover everyone getting tested at this point.
Okay, so I think in our town messaging, I know we have to, we can publicize the phase 1 restrictions. I think that part of that message should also be, though, people who are comfortable doing less.
Yeah.
We're still encouraging people to be cautious, especially our seniors, or, but I think that should be part of the message too, not, whoopee, we're opening. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I can guarantee you that won't be part of our messaging. Well, we're not ready to celebrate anything just yet. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and we have to see significant improvement across the board before you start to get into even phase 2, let alone getting to the point where we're moving beyond this whole pandemic. So it's going to be a while. That'll be part of what we. Our messaging is the importance for folks to be patient as we're going through this, despite the urge to see some significant movement quickly. I think we all still need to be patient with this marathon that we're running right now.
Yeah, and I think to make it clear to folks that our testing is limited and will be limited for a while, so that our data is limited too. And for anybody who's interested, I've been talking to OWASA about testing a wastewater stream. It's an approach that some communities are following. You can detect virus in the wastewater stream and kind of pinpoint when things are acting up. OWASA is looking into it. They're talking to partners about it. They say they don't have the staffing right now to act on it. Anybody else who thinks that's a good idea and wants to advocate for it with OWASA, I encourage you to do so. Thanks.
Ms. Stegman?
Two things. First, just following up on Jess's extremely diplomatic way of expressing herself, just to say it's deeply disappointing to hear that we have not been able to get it done with moving IFC. It's just, yeah, I don't even know what to say. It's we've done such a good job, and by we I mean the county and the town have done such an excellent job in so many areas, and then this one just hasn't. And so I second everything that Jess said about anything we can do, and it sounds like it is going to move forward, but I just really hope that we continue to be lucky without positive cases there. Just had to say that. But second, I wanted to a lot of people in the community are talking about not wanting to just sort of return to normal in some of the ways that lives have improved over this time, most notably around biking and pedestrians, people being outside. There's been a lot of interest, I think, in ways that we can try and the town can support the community continue that safely as more cars get back on the road, and the weather's so nice, people want to be outside. So I wanted to see if there's been any more discussion around exploring the possibility of temporary closing a lane so people can spread out more as they're social distancing, but trying not to get back in their cars. There's been interest in slow streets, those kinds of just innovations that have been happening in other communities, just if there's been discussion about that or what we can do to help encourage us to experiment with some of those ideas.
So first I want to thank you for that. Commend our manager. Maurice has taken this on himself to get the shelter folks moved. He has stayed on it. He's been on top of it. He's been pushing, advocating. He's done an incredible job. We know some things can just take inordinately along just because of all the wheels that have to turn, but he's been on top of it tirelessly. And we thought we were all set several times, and then it didn't come to pass. So,
and I absolutely thank you for that, Maurice. I know that you have been a champion for that.
He has.
Well, I appreciate both you saying that. We have a lot of staff who've been.
I know you do, but you've been this has been one of your goals. I will say that we've been meeting about how to do more things outside and reduce cars, but to bring people downtown. We're talking about how do we can we figure out opening up parking lots as outside dining opportunities, and so that people can have reasons to come downtown to other places where there's more outside dining. we're going to have to go through our restrictions and regulations and figure out what we can do. And I have an email, I'll just give Ralph a heads up, an email coming tomorrow about all that was discussed between the chamber and the downtown partnership in more in regards to how do we boost our economy back and have restaurants, but we folded in, people want to walk and bike to these places now. We don't believe DOT is going to let us close our main roads down that they're in charge of, but there may be ways to buffer out some of the roads, like you said, and create bike lanes in the right-hand lane with cones or some other form of fashion. So we're taking a look at all that. We see that as a work in progress as we try to figure this out. And just to let you guys all know too, we're talking with the university about their fall plans. We'll know more by the end of the month about what their fall semester is going to look like. It could be it will be very, very different. I can't really say which way. They won't make a decision until the end of this month. So there's a lot of those conversations too. How do we integrate all that going on with our own, where we intersect and where we overlap, and what does that look like? So there's many, many conversations, as you can imagine, going on, trying to put this all together. I love seeing all the people. I go for a walk every day, and I love seeing people out doing things that you haven't seen them do before. And the bike stores are out of bikes. Not all bike stores are out of bikes, but it's been interesting to watch that too. So there are some good, healthy living things going on. We want to keep encouraging that. And I think we're going to learn what routes people like to take and are taking as time goes on as well. Mr. Parker? You're muted.
I know, just a quick comment. First of all, I want to second what many of my colleagues, particularly Karen and Jess, have said about the IFC shelter. It's disappointing. I'll be diplomatic too. And I thank, and I know that our town staff has been working really, really hard. So I don't want to, this is definitely not directed at them, but it is disappointing. The other thing, to the extent that we're have any control over a lot, what happens with phases, I think it's important to remember that any consequence of relaxing is going to take 2 to 3 weeks to show up. It doesn't happen overnight. And so we have to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves in moving to the next phase, because if you move to phase 2 in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, you may discover phase 1 was a mistake, much less phase 2. So I think we've got to be really on guard for that. And, as things play out, make sure that, the right conversations are being had.
Yeah, that's true. We've learned that it's a 3-week window in some of the information and data. And we're learning from cities like New York and other cities in Seattle who handled it very differently and what the outcomes were. I'm also going to share with council that the Orange leaders met today, and we're going to be issuing an additional state of emergency. We're going to be extending it into June. We're still working out the details. By continuing a state of emergency, we get to continue acting more nimbly and being able to pull together more quickly how we handle things like making a determination that we need to do something different. So that will be forthcoming. I don't have we just talked this morning. The attorneys are still reviewing, so we will hopefully get something out. It will be out before 5 p.m. on Friday, just so you're aware. But anyway, it'll be sometime in June that we're extending the state of emergency, which also allows us to meet virtually. So Maurice and I are also talking about what that means for our upcoming council meetings. We have scheduled all of May to continue to be virtual, but you need to be thinking about what that looks like if we continue virtually. So for the time being, so that will be coming, and I don't have enough information to share with you other than that right now. So again, we meet daily, and every day something else adds to the mix. So I share that with you. Okay, if we're done with the update, it's time for public comment on items not on the printed agenda. Ms. Harvey, I don't know if we have anybody signed up to speak on items not on the printed agenda.
I had Susan Romaine, but I don't see her name in the list. If you are here, you.
So she was with Porch. I think she wanted us to issue the proclamation, which we say congratulations again, and how grateful we are. Do you not see her on the list?
I do not.
Okay. And there's anyone else signed up?
If there's anybody who's interested, if you can use the raise the hand function or the *9 on your phone, that will give us the indication.
Okay.
I see none.
All right, thank you. Council members, any announcements from any of you guys? Mr. Nguyen?
So in honor of Happy Heritage Month, UNCTV is partnering with North Carolina Asian Americans Together to host a virtual screening of the PBS special Asian Americans. The actual special will air next week. So this is kind of an exclusive sneak preview. It will be tomorrow evening from 7 to 8:30 p.m. There's an event on Facebook, so tune in for that if you're interested. It just details kind of the accomplishments and struggles of Asian Americans throughout American history.
Cool, thank you. Anything else? All right, then that brings us to our consent agenda. We have several items on the consent agenda and no one has pulled anything. I can read the
consent agenda.
Okay. It's been moved by Ms. Anderson. Second by Mr. Parker. All right. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. Ms. Gu is texting me, I hope. Motion is unanimous, it seems. Okay. Thank you. All right. So that brings us to our first, well, that was our discussion item. Sorry, I should have put the other one. Charting our future. Information update on the future land use map. Take this away, Ms. Duffy.
Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening. I am Elisa Duffy Rogers, the LUMO project manager. It is wonderful to be back with you tonight in this virtual environment. Before you for the first time is the complete future land use map with all of the components consolidated into one document. This evening, I will briefly review the components of the complete future land use map, outline some of the proposed changes to the land use plan from Chapel Hill 2020 for the areas outside of the focus areas, and briefly review the revised engagement and communication plans. As we have discussed previously, the future land use map includes a number of elements. These include a document explaining the future land use map and its components, the guiding statements, which form the policy foundation for both the future land use map and the overhaul of the land use management ordinance, the map book, which includes the resiliency assessment maps as well as others, the town-wide future land use map for those areas of town outside of the focus areas, and the focus area maps with the focus area principles. Since you have seen most of these elements of the flume before, I will concentrate this evening on the major changes to the land use plan that are evident on the town-wide future land use map, which is on page 24 in your flume document. Once adopted, the town-wide future land use map, which is entitled Chapel Hill Future Land Use Map 2049, and the focus area maps will replace the land use plan from Chapel Hill 2020. Since the land use plan is being radically altered due to the increased attention of the focus areas, changes are necessary to the land use plan. As staff began examining the land use plan, deficiencies and errors were noted. In addition, it became evident that additional changes were necessary due to inconsistencies with the town's zoning atlas. The land use categories define and describe the desired land uses for each parcel in town. Since the land use categories play such an integral part in defining the town's desired future land uses, staff drafted definitions for the land use categories, which were missing from Chapel Hill 2020. We also included example photos of these land use categories from around town. These definitions and photos are included in the complete flume, which you receive with your agenda packet. For some reason, my screen will not advance. I'd like to spend a few minutes highlighting some of the changes from the land use plan in Chapel Hill 2020 that are depicted on the future land use map 2049. Prior to doing so, I'd like to give you an overview of how the following slides will be organized. On the right-hand side, you will see the land use plan from Chapel Hill 2020. On the left-hand side, you will see the draft townwide future land use map. On a few slides, in the middle is a blow up of the proposed change. Because of this virtual environment, I will stop after each proposed change and check in to see if you have any questions regarding the proposed change. Your agenda packet included a map with each of these changes highlighted and numbered. And if you would prefer to refer to that, the change that I'm about to describe is number 1 on your map. This is an older area of town that is on the south side of Mount Carmel Church Road between the Urban Services boundary and the eastern edge of the ETJ. The land use plan from Chapel Hill 2020 designated this neighborhood rural residential 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Most of the lots in this neighborhood are around an acre or less. And as a result of that, the land use plan for the future land use map designates this area as low residential. This also aligns with the current zoning for the property, which is R1A. Are there any questions or concerns before we move to the next change?
Elise, I'm not going to be able to see people with your screen up. So council members, if you have a question, will you announce yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, this is Amy. Do you want us to use the raise hands, Pam, or just?
I'm not going to be able to see because I can only see the 6 people at a time. So I wouldn't even see that, I don't think.
Okay, gotcha. So Elisa, when you have 2 different, what you call rural residential designations in the new land use map?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is currently zoned at 1 per 5 acres?
No, the land use category designation on the land use plan is 1 per 5.
Okay.
The zoning
is?
I'm sorry?
And the zoning is?
R1A, which requires a minimum lot area of, I believe it's slightly over, slightly less than 1 acre, if I recall correctly.
Okay, so we're not changing the zoning in this area, correct? Or we're not having a designation that reflects a different zoning that already exists on the ground or that exists in our zoning map.
Right, yeah, when staff started looking at the land use plan from Chapel Hill 2020 and our existing zoning, almost every case that we're going to discuss here tonight, there was an inconsistency. And so, right now, for example, if someone wanted to come in and do something on that land, certainly they could do so in conformance with the zoning, but then it would be out of conformance with the 1 unit per 5 acres, which is what's designated on the land use plan.
Gotcha. But the plan is not controlling in that case. It would be the zoning that's controlling.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
On your reference map, this is area 2. There appears to be an error on the land use plan. Essentially, the designations for these 2 areas were flip-flopped and they were reversed. So to correct this error and align with the existing zoning, the areas along South 15501 would be designated as 1 dwelling unit per acre. And then the areas that surround Dogwood Acres would be designated as rural residential, 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. And again, that brings them precisely in alignment with their current zoning. Do we have any questions or concerns about that?
Again, if you'll please announce yourself and just ask your question. Okay. Oh, Michael, are you asking one? He's still muted.
Councilmember Parker, you're muted.
Move your mouse, then unmute yourself. We still can't hear you.
You know, my computer was having a hissy fit, but anyway. My question is, since the land use map is essentially aspirational and the zoning is what things are today, is it necessarily appropriate to go and align the future land use map with the existing zoning since in the future we might want to have a different zoning there?
It's not necessary, but it is troubling. For example, if someone wanted to come in and propose a conditional zoning here or here, they wouldn't be able, the first test of that, is it consistent with our future land use map? And so the answer would be no, even though it might very well be consistent with the zoning. So your point's well taken that it's not always necessary to align the two, but in the situations that we're proposing to you tonight, it seems to make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So this is the ETJ triangle just north of I-40, which we've affectionately named the cat ear. And it is currently designated on the land use plan as 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. The existing zoning in this area mandates lot sizes that are slightly over 2 acres. Therefore, the existing zoning and the designation on the land use plan do not align. So consequently, the draft future land use map designates this area as rural residential, 1 dwelling unit per acre. And are there any questions or concerns from council?
Again, please speak up and announce yourself if you have a question.
This is Jess. I don't have a question, and I think this is fine. I just know that this was one of the areas that we were asked to kind of include for planning purposes. And so I just want to make sure that we're really clarifying for folks that we're not including this as a focus area. This is just putting it into alignment, putting the zoning atlas into compliance with the zoning. That we're not doing any other planning here, because this is something that I think we intentionally decided to not address in this project in any other way. Elisa, can you just confirm that I'm correct about that, and maybe just reassure people that we're not doing anything besides putting the two into alignment?
No, ma'am, we're not. And you're correct. Y'all did intentionally make a decision not to include this as a focus area and to retain the existing rural residential character in the area. So this is just simply, like I said, aligning those two things so that it makes sense.
Yeah, which totally makes sense to me. I just wanted to highlight that, given that this was a place that had come up before. So
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And then our final change, this is changes number 6 on your reference map. As a carryover from the 2000 comp plan, the land use plan designates 2 locations in the southern portion of town along South 15501 as potential affordable housing sites. After consulting with the housing staff, these designations were removed because their inclusion makes it look like these are the only 2 places in town where it's desirable to have or to build affordable housing. And again, are there any comments or concerns?
This is Jess again. I guess my question is there a reason that we're removing these as opposed to including places where we particularly think that affordable housing would be desirable? Or is it just that due to inclusionary zoning, or we want affordable housing everywhere? So is that why we're not choosing to include versus exclude?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, the housing staff felt that, again, we were having the appearance that this was the only two places that it was desirable. And what they wanted to say is that it's appropriate everywhere, which is in many of the focus area principles. They felt like this was perhaps giving a contradictory message. And so it was better to just remove it and then allow us to develop the sites that they're doing, and then allow it through our inclusionary zoning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on to the revised engagement plan. Because of COVID-19, staff has revised the engagement plans for this final phase of the flume. For the most part, if you concur, the engagement will take place using online resources. In order to provide an additional opportunity for council to comment on the complete flume besides this evening, it will be emailed to each council member using Adobe, which will allow you to comment directly on the draft. Staff will then receive each council member's comments, and those will be uploaded to the Charting Our Future website. In addition, for context, Brian Peterson has recorded a presentation on the precedent images, as well as urban design, and those links were provided to you in your agenda materials. In addition, the presentation that I just gave will be recorded and provided for your later use. Based on the council's comments, if necessary, the flume can be revised prior to engagement with the community and our boards and commissions. And staff had proposed the council's review prior to seeking input from the boards and commissions and the community, since council really hasn't had an opportunity before now to view and evaluate all the pieces of the flume in one package. For the development review boards and commissions, the complete flume will be individually emailed for their individual comments. Each board will then, those comments will be summarized, and that summary will be returned to the boards for their review. If the boards concur, the summary will then be posted on the project website. For community input, staff investigated many online platforms, and Conveo simulates public input at a public meeting. An offline opportunity will also be provided, most likely by providing a phone number for community members to call if they lack internet access. Included with your agenda materials is a detailed communication plan that publicizes and how we intend to publicize the online opportunity. That plan includes communications to the town's neighborhood liaisons, the NAACP's Affordable Housing Committee, the town's affordable housing partners, and the nonprofit community, which includes contact information for the Jackson Center, for empowerment for El Centro Hispanico and the IFC. So in terms of next steps, ideally the flume would be adopted prior to your summer break in the schedule of meetings. If not, then the fall. Following adoption, a request for proposal for the LUMA rewrite could be issued. It is possible to issue the RFP for the LUMA rewrite prior to adoption if council feels comfortable doing so. So again, thank you. And this evening we have provided you an informational update on the complete flume and the revised engagement plans as a result of COVID-19. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if you would prefer that I unshare my screen, just let me know that.
If you could unshare, that would help, please. Okay, council, any clarifying questions? Ms. Anderson, Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Stegman.
Thank you, Elisa, for this. This is a brief question, but can you clarify what this next round of public input is intended to accomplish? I mean, is it really just now that all the pieces are together? Are we trying to kind of get one last round, or are there particular questions that you're trying to answer, or particular things that still haven't gotten the scrutiny that they need? And I guess I'm asking partially because, understanding that budgets are interesting these days, just wondering, and I don't want to, if there is a really compelling reason to do this, then great. I don't want to cut out the public in any way. I'm just wondering what, if this is a place where, if we've already really gotten input on the components already, if this is something that, what the purpose is.
It was really designed initially to be a very abbreviated engagement period and to check in. It's all together now. Give us any of your final comments. But that check-in was really going to be a trip to, the board and commission review and then a large public meeting. And obviously we can't do the large public meeting now. And so we tried to find a way that would simulate that and give broad public viewing, but in a limited way. So it really is that final check-in before we bring it back to you.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not trying to insinuate that we don't go out to the public again. I just wanted to kind of make sure I understood what we were trying to accomplish. So that's helpful.
And it is really very abbreviated compared to our previous times. Like I would anticipate that the online input probably would be available for 3 weeks or so, as opposed to, all of last summer or, all the extended periods of time that we've done.
Yep.
And that's partly why the communication schedule is so robust. It's, everybody knows, here it is. This is the amount of time that you've got to get this done.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
All right, Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Stegman.
I thought it was comment time, so I'm going to pass.
All right, Ms. Stegman.
Jess and I are just like right there tonight. I guess my question is, I really appreciate the creativity and the effort to transition this to a virtual process. You said sort of ideally or hopefully we would get this finalized in June. I would love to hear, we are absolutely finishing this in June. So what do you see as kind of, what are the things that absolutely have to happen or you need from council, or what things could hold us up? But, I would love for us to just be committed to June.
The major things would be getting comments back from y'all, and then getting time to get in front of all the boards, and then to, that 3-week period of time or so for the online input. And then if there is something that rises to the surface that we don't anticipate, then that certainly could delay it. But certainly getting the comments back from you in your individual review, the comments back from the boards and commissions, and then compiling all that could take time. So that
you'll do a timeline back to give us that deadline that you'll need from us in order to make your deadline.
Yes, ma'am. So if you'll notice in the draft, I said, I'm going to give you a week, which is not a lot of time.
But that's good. That's good. And just a related question, more perhaps for Maurice, are we saving money from not doing all this in person, or is it just different ways to spend money?
We're not spending as much probably as we would have if we were doing in person, but there are costs that are associated with the platform and that type of thing. But I don't think there's a huge difference. Elisa could correct me if I'm wrong.
Right now, Conveo is actually offering some discounted rates. So that's helpful. And we don't have to rent a room, and we don't have to, get food and those kinds of things. So I think it will definitely save us some money.
Okay, thank you.
Any other clarifying questions before we ask for public input, Mr. Parker?
This is the clarifying question. Normally, when we have things like this, or even just development projects, it's sort of a linear process where we hear from the public, it goes to the boards and commissions, comment, then it finally comes to council and we are magic. In this case, it seems like we're trying to do everybody's input sort of at the same time, very much in parallel. And is that because we're just trying to really get it done by the end of June, or are there some other reasons why we're taking that approach?
So the direction I had received from y'all in the past was that you really wanted to feel very comfortable with the draft before we sent it out to the boards and commissions and to the community. And this is really the first time we've gathered it all into one place and given it to you. So based on that prior direction, that's why I'm giving it to you now. You'll have about a week to give us comments. And then assuming that there's nothing from your comments that is that would necessitate us substantially revising the draft, then we could then take it out to the boards and commissions, take it out to the community, compile all their comments, and then bring it back to you.
So then after it goes to the community after it goes to the boards and commissions, at least if in principle, or if we feel like it's important, the council would then have one last opportunity to make further changes or comments or whatever?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Harvey, do we have anyone from the public signed up to speak on this item?
I do not have anybody signed up to speak.
I call if anyone's out there on virtual or phone that wants to speak, if you could let us know. Okay, so we'll give them a moment to come back, but then I'm going to start asking for council comments. Ms. Harvey, you'll let us know if anyone does sign up, then we can come back to that. All right, Ms. Ryan, followed by Mr. Boyncy.
Okay, Elisa, in your email to us, you asked for answers to some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So are the new definitions and photos for the land use categories helpful? The answer is yes. The only thing that I found is that the low residential.
Let me know if you need help.
What? Ralph?
Ralph, you're not mute. Okay, there you go.
Never mind. Sorry.
So yes, I think they are helpful. There was the low residential and the medium residential looked kind of the same to me. They look like Southern Village shots. So maybe the low residential, one of our older neighborhoods like Colony Woods, or that had where you can see the spacing a little bit more.
Okay.
For the council review, is the submitting of individual comments useful? It is. I'm sure I'm going to have some questions before I'm ready to do my comments. So I don't know if you just want to go ahead and establish a time when folks who have questions can call into you or and ask. That would be great. But yeah, I think that'll work. In terms of will gathering and summarizing the board and commission comments be meaningful? Yeah, I think they're great. I might encourage people who are council liaisons to reach out to the board chairs just to say, hey, CDC, I know that you looked at this. Can you, is there anything that I need to know that's not reflected in your notes? So just to encourage my fellow council members on that. And I don't know anything about the Conveo platform for community input. I know that we're in unusual situations now, and I know we've done a lot to try to get community members who don't have access to lots of tech or email or online stuff engaged, and that's going to be much more difficult now. Is Conveo something you can use with a smartphone?
It is. Actually, it's extremely mobile friendly.
Okay.
And so that would be helpful. But I do think it's important when we put out our communications to say, if you don't feel comfortable on that platform, here's a phone number that you can call. And you can, if I don't answer, I'll call you back and you can give me comments. We have a few community members who have access to email, but don't have the internet bandwidth to do the kinds of things like Conveo. So also in that communication will be, if you just want to email your comments, you can do that. So we'll try to find a number of different ways for people to contribute if they feel comfortable. And so there was a link to the Conveo in your materials. And so if you had trouble accessing that, I can resend that. And I think your idea of sort of establishing office hours is a good idea. So I'll work with the mayor and the town manager to do that if they're okay with that.
Thanks. And I really appreciated the grid where you outlined all of the different community partners and segments of the community you're trying to reach and how you're doing that. I think it really shows how hard you're working to extend that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Mr. Boyncy, followed by Ms. Anderson.
Yes, thank you for all of your work on this, Lisa. I just had one comment. I'm looking at I guess the one of the first pages of the not the guidelines, but the introduction page where you explain what is charting our future and explaining the different components. It seems to me kind of at every stage of this process, someone's either raised a point or asked a question about the legally like binding effects of the flume. I think it would be worth it to just make a quick note or sentence under that subsection entitled relationship to the land use management ordinance and zoning map. Just a quick blurb about the distinction, the legally kind of binding distinction between a flume and a zoning map, just to clarify for future users and readers, what effect this has. I think what you have in there is excellent in terms of what that relationship is, but in terms of that kind of that binding question that keeps coming up, I think it'd be worth it to have a short sentence just clarifying that.
Yes, sir, I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Anderson and Mr. Nguyen.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that I like the additions. I think the visuals are helpful. I did want to ask, I know this is kind of our final push to get public input, and now we are virtual, which is interesting, and people are in different states of being able to engage or not. But I was wondering, I can't remember if we had done something with the schools and the way they push out, is it Peach Jar? Am I making up stuff? Peach Jar, right? Yeah. Especially now, I think the schools are figuring out who has internet and who doesn't, because of the need to do virtual school. And they've been trying to get hotspots to people, and I think there are still some gaps. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to work with the schools to figure out folks who might not be able to engage. They may not have the bandwidth right now, and I would understand that. So I would not fault anybody for not taking us up on it, but at least offering them the opportunity, given folks that we know are struggling with internet, that we could maybe have the schools put out something to them, giving them the invitation to call, just as a way to get, to give them the opportunity. That just seems like one more way that we have. It's a COVID benefit, apparently, that we kind of can maybe get some folks engaged in a way that we haven't really been able to do before. So that's just a suggestion of maybe one more outreach opportunity. But I really like all that you've done, Elisa, and thank you. And thank you for transitioning this to the virtual format. It is helpful.
Wonderful. As you know better than I, Peach Jar really has that flyer, and we could easily put into there, if you can't, get to the Conveo, call this phone number. And I think we will also put, offering our translation and interpretation services for those community members that have limited English proficiency. All of that will be in the flyer as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen, then Mr. Parker.
Yeah, I think Lisa, great job. I know how long you've been working on this, and just a lot of hours poured into this document. So shout out to you. I think for the engagement plan part, I really liked how you laid out all those different demographic groups you really wanted to hit. I know that Sarah Venus and Lauren Clark have been working really hard with their community connections plan, and have built a lot of good relationships in the community. So I would encourage you to work really closely with them and leverage some of those community partners to really help you reach some of those communities. Because I did see in the column, a lot of the I forgot what it said specifically, but it was like email notification with like nonprofits was kind of I saw a lot of that. So would encourage more interaction with those partners to find other ways of reaching those individuals. And then the second thing was for the Conveo link on our packet, it currently, I just pulled it up, it links to Mobility East Central Area Wide Community Workshop. Is that supposed to link to that?
It is, because I wanted to show you what it would.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm imagining ours would just look exactly the same with this, but with the Flume content instead of this mobility stuff, right?
Right. So it would be the focus area maps. And we would have, a presentation because not everybody's been engaged all the way through this, explaining the focus area maps, giving them an opportunity to comment, and then another button that says, for more information, push here. So that would give us the opportunity to do that.
I think this looks great. I think when you send it out, I think people would appreciate it if you had some concise, clear instructions on some of what these buttons mean. Because from what I've been seeing, the buttons kind of don't have labels or anything around them. You kind of have to hover over them to see what you're supposed to do there. And it's not obvious that you can hover over them or click on them.
Right.
So just some clear instructions around if, buttons that look like this means there's a question for you to answer. The thing with the little play on the side is introduction video or presentation video, something along those lines for people to make sure that it's as easy as possible to use.
Okay, great idea. Thank you.
Mr. Parker?
Of course.
Thanks, Elisa. Great job as always. Thank you for all your hard work. I think that the definitions and the photos, really add an important dimension. I'll be looking at everything more closely if there's any nits that need picking, but otherwise I really think, it's certainly light years from where we are today or where we've been over the past, 10 years or so. So thank you so much for all you've done so far. I hope that we'll get this done by the end of June, but if we don't, I would really encourage that we move forward with the RFP and engaging a consultant for our next phase, because while the flume is clearly very important, there are many things in the LUMO that have nothing to do with the flume, that are process oriented, that are, rules and regulations about all sorts of things, signs, take your pick. So I think that either way, whether we get it done in June or not, I think I'd like us to move forward as aggressively as possible in getting, a consultant engaged and, keeping things moving as quickly as we can. Consistent, of course, with both, what's going on with COVID-19 and its effects on our budget and our financial situation. But again, thank you.
Thank you. And if y'all are comfortable with that, comfortable with issuing the RFP prior to adoption, we can certainly move forward with writing that and getting that.
I just don't see a downside to it.
Okay, I'm going to read out a couple of the comments and questions we've had during this and then add mine to the end of that. We had from Gary Baum of Windsor Circle, Glen Heights. It was removed from the flume focus area. Why is it coming up on the 2020 land use plan as a future focus discussion area? I would hope that now that it is removed from the flume focus area, that it stays out of the flume focus area in the future. Thank you for doing this. Lisa, do you have a response or do you want to?
I guess I'm a little confused by the comment. Oh, I know what he's saying. So the land use plan for Chapel Hill 2020 does show it continuing as does show it as a future focus area. But once this is adopted, that map will be stripped from Chapel Hill 2020. And so it will not be in the future focus area anymore. Okay. So I think that's his question is, why is it still showing up on the land use plan? Well, the land use plan was adopted the way it was adopted in June of 2012. And then when y'all adopt this, that'll go away and this will replace it.
And I think maybe that statement on the front of all of this, that this will be replacing the entire map, I think to make it very clear for folks that this is a new future land use map. It will be replacing the other one, just make it really bold for everybody. So
that's a good idea. Okay.
I really like the way you highlighted the differences, by the way. It's very helpful to see them side by side. It was really, really helpful. All right, we had a few other chat comments that I will share. Where'd they go? Okay. Ooh, we got one here. Okay. This is from Julie McClintock. I'm questioning the value of spending lots of town resources on a virtual engagement process. Since everyone must Zoom these days, I don't think people will engage. Maybe staff could write contract to reduced expenses if they're not used. I don't know that we've heard an amount for the expenses, but any comments you are able to share at this point in time?
So as I said, the Conveyo they're giving us very, very discounted rates in this COVID-19 situation. So it's not a huge dollar amount for us. Certainly, if you think that it would be better served to do something else, I mean, we certainly could hold virtual drop-ins, through Zoom, or there's a platform through MIT called Hangout that's free. We certainly could do that as opposed to the online engagement, but it's going to be less than $1,000.
Okay, so well, that puts it in reference. Sorry, by putting in less than 1,000, that seems doable. I mean, we totally believe in as much community engagement as we can get and making opportunities available and easier for people to use. And if you would like to try this platform, I think that's a pretty acceptable expense range for this type of project. All right, council members, wrapping up here. Again, I also echo the comments. Great job. Thank you for keeping us moving forward during this incredibly interesting time. We still have to get business done. We're determined to bring clarity to our future land use map, to set some goals and priorities. And I think you've worked really, really hard. I know you've worked really, really hard in trying to make it meet those goals for us. So council members, I don't know, do we have to make a motion to transmit our comments, or do you have the information you need from us, or were there other questions you wanted answered?
No, ma'am, I have everything. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Thank you all for your comments, and I'm looking forward to Ms. Rogers setting up office hour drop-ins. And if you do think of something later, please email or call her, and I know she will be very responsive, as she always is. So
I will. Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 11 on our agenda. Establish a council committee to recommend community members to participate in the Town Attorney Assessment Center. We had several of you volunteer, and Mayor Pro Tem Parker and I discussed. We have the volunteers of Alan Boynton, Jess Anderson, Ty Wynn. If that's acceptable to all of you, I'd like someone to be able to make that motion. These folks will be looking through the applications of people who want to apply to be on this town assessment centers and striving to find the balance and diversity and perspectives and people who are available to participate. Unfortunately, this will probably be done almost entirely virtually, so that is going to put a constraint on how we do this. This process is ongoing with the hopes of being able to find a really good attorney to replace our incredible Ralph Carpanos, who's been with us a very long time. We're hoping to have a new attorney selected by the end of June, if all possible. And we're going to have to be doing this, like I said, mostly in a virtual setting at this point. So
we appoint council members Anderson, Boynton, and Wynn to the committee to select community members for the assessment center.
I second.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Okay, you got this. I'm not going to be able to see people's votes with the split screen if I can get it back, but we can put the screen back after we read through it. Okay, there you go. Thank you. All right, all those in favor, oh, sorry, any discussion? Sorry, I should have asked for any discussion. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
It's a
opposed?
squad.
Sorry, any opposed? Raise your hand and please say nay. Motion appears to be unanimous, except for I'm not getting a sign from Hong Bin. Maybe she can send a message or text me. Okay. All right, you will put the split screen back up so we can see the, thank you. The next page, there we go. So the application deadline for people to apply is going to be May 18th. The council committee will review these applications and then they recommend 3 to 5 community members to the council. There are different categories for the assessment center. And then the council officially appoints the community members to participate in the assessment center. We always ask this committee to choose a couple of alternates so that we have flexibility if some people can't make the dates that are then chosen for the assessment center. We have also offered childcare services for anyone who wants to participate in the assessment center. So we will make sure that anyone has, especially during this time, has the opportunity to participate who may need transportation, well, I guess virtually you wouldn't need transportation, but childcare services in order to do this. So I remind council members of that. I believe Mr. Boyncy and Ms. Anderson have served on this kind of committee before. And Mr. Wynn, we look forward to your participation in this as well. So, all right.
Wait, quick question. Is that community application live already?
Ms. Harvey, can you let us know, is it up and running yet?
I believe it went live this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, and please push that out on all your networks, council members, to get people to apply. We do as much reach out as we know, but we can always use some more. So please reach out and ask people to apply to be on the assessment center. It's a lot of fun. I did it as a citizen a long time ago, and it's you get to role play sometimes too. It's great. So, all right, so motion and approved. Okay, so that brings us to our concept plan review. Sorry, I forgot to ask for public comment on that item. I'm so sorry. Amy, did anyone sign, Ms. Harvey, did anyone sign up to speak on that one?
I did not have anybody sign up to.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay. And that brings us to our concept plan review of Aura Chapel Hill at 1000 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Mr. Sudol.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Sudol with the Chapel Hill Planning Department. I have 9 slides and it'll take about 5 minutes to present this concept plan for Aura Chapel Hill. The site is located at 1000 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard at the intersection with North Estes Drive. The application before you tonight is a concept plan. As a refresher, there are a few key things to remember about concept plans. First, the applicant is presenting a rough initial sketch. Staff does not conduct a formal review of the concept plan. Instead, that sketch is forwarded to the advisory boards and you, the council, for preliminary feedback. If the applicant decides to move forward with a formal submittal following your comments, there are 2 primary options they may choose: a special use permit or conditional zoning. The third option, a development agreement, must be agreed upon by both the council and applicant before moving forward. In this case, the applicant has specifically requested conditional zoning. With that in mind, the recommendation before you tonight is Resolution R7, transmitting comments to the applicant regarding the proposed development. The applicant's concept plan proposes to construct a mixed-use development of townhomes, apartments, office, retail, and amenities. They are proposing around 505,000 square feet of floor area and up to 395 dwelling units. Approximately 637 parking spaces would be provided. The applicant proposes a rezoning from R1 to OI3 to meet the density and use requirements. The property is currently adjacent to OI2, OI3, and U1, as well as residential districts 1, 2, and 5. This is a site plan view of the existing conditions. The site boundary is shown here in green, with an intermittent stream in the lower right corner, shown in blue. At the time of submittal, the stream was being reviewed to verify its classification with the knowledge that if the intermittent classification were confirmed, it would include a 50-foot resource conservation district and Jordan buffer around the stream. I believe the applicant has updated plans tonight that you will see later this evening reflecting that 50-foot buffer. Airport Hazard Zone C, which prohibits new buildings until the airport is closed, impacts the west end of the site, shown here in red. The airport is currently closed to fixed-wing aircraft, but is still used by UNC helicopters. The town is working with UNC regarding a closure letter for the airport. The site was also cleared in 2018 as part of a forestry permit issued by the town of Chapel Hill in accordance with state law. It should be noted that the town has the right to deny a building permit or refuse to approve a site plan or subdivision for a period of 3 years following the issuance of a forestry permit. This is the concept plan as it was submitted. Apartments are shown in yellow, townhomes in orange, live-work units in pink, and commercial units in red. An amenity building is shown in gray near the stormwater management area proposed at the southeast end of the site. A traffic circle is proposed at the entrance along Estes Drive, and a bus rapid transit stop is shown near the entrance along MLK. The Community Design Commission and Housing Advisory Board have both reviewed the concept plan and provided feedback. Their comments are in your agenda packet. So once again, the recommendation before you tonight is for Resolution R7, transmitting comments to the applicant regarding the proposed development. We have an opportunity for any clarifying questions right now, and the applicant is also here with a presentation. Thank you.
Council members, since I can't see all of you, do you have any clarifying questions of Mr. Sudol? Oh, now I can see you. Anybody need a clarifying question? Ms. Anderson?
Michael, could you give some clarification on the BRT was included in the study, correct? In terms of the traffic?
I don't want to say that since I haven't actually reviewed the traffic impact assessment. I don't know that it's completed at this point. But if the applicant would like to step in and answer that question, I'd open the floor to them as well.
Applicant, anyone?
We're going to wait. Let's see. Do you want to wait and just let the applicant make their presentation? Then you can ask that question when they.
Sure. If the applicant just could address that in the presentation. I'm just wondering about mode shift and whether BRT was taken into account. And I know it's a little tricky because we don't have the TIA yet, but I was just wondering if you had some insight on that. So that would be great if you can address that as you did.
I will address that, yes.
Thank you, Dan.
Any other clarifying questions of Mr. Sudol? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant then, please.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all. It's wonderful to be here with you virtually from a distance. And this is a bold new experiment for all of us, I think, but we're looking forward to showing you what we're up to. Before I get started, again, I'm Dan Jewell with Coulter Jewell Thames here with you this evening. I would like to ask my client, the representative for the developer, Ryan Stewart, just to say a few introductory remarks, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. It's great to be here, albeit over the internet. For those who I haven't met, I'm Ryan Stewart, Managing Director of Trinsic Residential Group, Carolinas Division. We're the contracted purchaser and developer of the project. We're a national mixed-use and market-rate multifamily developer headquartered in Dallas, Texas. We have 8 regional offices. We're building currently in metros such as Seattle, Portland, Austin, Denver, to name a few. I moved to the Triangle in August, full-time to start the Carolinas office for Trinsic. And for those who don't know, I'm in fact a native, born in Durham, raised in Hillsborough, and glad to be back home. So our project, I want to highlight a few initial elements that are differentiating from other prior submittals on this site. So first, we're offering a partially subterranean park site, allowing for 100% boulevard parking. There's no field parking, there's no double loaded parking. So that's a unique feature. We're offering disaggregated building masses, not just building articulation, but multiple buildings with no buildings larger than 90 units. We're offering no buildings taller than 4 stories with transitions to 3 stories to the east. We're offering a right-sized commercial component that is perfect for servicing the residents of Aura and the immediately surrounding communities. We're offering community housing. We are not student housing developers, and TRG has never built a purpose-built student housing project. And finally, we offer approximately 50 affordable flats that will be simultaneously built with the market rate flats. They'll be indistinguishable, floating, and fully integrated into the project. So we'll speak more about those in detail with our presentation with Dan. In closing, we know this tract is uniquely positioned in the town and is strategic in many ways, and we're excited to formally present our project. Our team is Dan Jewell, who most of you know, and then Susanna Dancy also, who is our urban design and retail consultant. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dan and he'll finish the presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. All right. Michael did a great introductory job as usual. Thank you, Michael. A couple slides I'll gloss over, go over very quickly, very high level, but you all know where the site is. The airport is directly to the west. I've landed at that airport many years past and flown over the site, which is why nothing has been built to date. I'll speak a little bit more about that airport hazard zone in a few minutes. The important things are the proximity to the Shadowwood Apartments, the Coker Woods neighborhood. Notice all of the green space on this edge of Coker Wood. That is some of their public open space. Also note this wooded area here. That is the Whit Rummel property. It is not included in this application. That abuts Somerset, but that was also an important part of the Central West Small Area Plan. And I would also note that the Chapel Hill YMCA is located here, and any of you who've traversed this area in the evening or during the day or had kids at the YMCA over the years, as I have had, know they've got a terrible access problem, and it would be very beneficial to them to potentially have an outlet onto Estes. So we have been coordinating with them. This is the Central West Plan. I'm not going to explain much about it because two of your council members happen to co-chair that plan back in 2013, Mr. Parker and Ms. Ryan, they know a lot more about it than I do. But what's important for now is to know that this is the site. A couple of things they identified were access, roundabout, a significant anchor at the corner, and also have looked at some street connections. And again, this is the Rummel property. It is not included in this application, but it's certainly an integral part to our design approach. As we zoom in to that portion of the Central West Plan, which includes this parcel, you can see some specifics about what it was recommending in its approach. Notice the building heights, 3 to 4 stories along the northeastern quadrant up against the apartments and Coker Woods, 3 stories along Estes, 3 to 4 to 5 stories along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Also notice a grid street pattern, really good urban planning. Noticed a proposed greenway non-vehicular connection along North Estes Drive. That is actually already in the works. And again, as we mentioned, this roundabout that was shown at the exit, which would also provide an opportunity for the YMCA to get out. Also notice that the orangish color is designated as mostly residential, and the purple color, I would call it, is a mix of uses. And so I'm going to talk now about how we think that our proposed plan falls into that. First and foremost is the connectivity. So you can see there was a strong east-west road connector shown from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard over to the Rummel property through the site. We have done that with a street that goes all the way through and goes up to the Rummel property. We have, though, put a little jog in it. I think as much as anything, that's some traffic calming to keep speeds down, that sort of thing, but it does provide that kind of connectivity. We have eliminated one of those street connections shown on Estes, mostly in deference to the amount of traffic on Estes, which is an issue, and that would be an understatement. I will talk to that a little bit more in a subsequent slide. But again, our connection would be out to this where we hope will be a roundabout, and we've actually provided an internal one as well. The green lines represent all of the non-vehicular connections, pedestrian, bicycles, that sort of thing. And you can just see how robust that is. So strong east-west connections, again, all the way through from Martin Luther King to the Rummel property. A lot of north-south connections, both Shadowwood Apartments, pedestrian connection up to the Coker Woods open space. Another pedestrian connection over on the far eastern side in the former Duke Energy right-of-way, which, by the way, has been abandoned, and we will be cleaning that up as part of this project. And then also good north-south connectivity all the way down to Estes Drive. So literally plenty of opportunities to walk all the way through the site, north and south, east and west, and most importantly, a good pedestrian connection that anchors this corner so that you can get across and make those connections to Carolina North and the future bus station over there. And not last but not least, the future BRT station, which I understand we would get the opportunity to design that, create something architecturally significant as part of this project. So this is the old plan, as Michael said, and it's, we're still substantially looking at this. I'll talk about the new one in a minute, but a few of the main things. Michael talked about the types of buildings, the apartments, which will be stacked flats, the live work units, which actually have duck under parking. The parking would be under the backside. The orange buildings are townhouses, 2 and 3 stories. This set of townhouses here is done as much as anything to create a better street experience along Estes, but also to conceal the only parking lot we are putting in that actually has 2 full bays of parking. One of the strong design tenets of this project is to create more street parking. So rather than having parking lots, create streets that have parking along them. To that effect, we're proposing diagonal parking on what we're calling our main street through the east and west of the site. We're creating smaller parking pads with green space in our business district, our commercial zone, on-street parking along the street here and here, and also on the backside. Here we've shown a tabletop, which is just one extra level of parking over a bit of the parking lot to grab some extra spaces. And similarly, in this area here, this would also have a tabletop, just one level over a lower level parking lot. And by the way, as Ryan mentioned, that lower level is largely dug into the ground, not totally, but largely. And there's quite an expense of that, but we know one of the goals is to keep surface parking as light as possible. And what we've come up with, we have about 18% of the site we've calculated that's actually encumbered by surface parking. And in my experience in other multi-use deals like this, where most of it's surface park, that's a very low amount, a low percentage of surface parking. Again, these live work units would be, say, like 2-story townhouses over a flex space below, where you could have an office, a real estate office, a broker, a professional, maybe a landscape architect's office, who knows, somebody like that down below there. And we think one of the very important parts of this project is to create a strong presence at the corner. We know the Central West plan showed an anchor at that corner and quite a bit more retail. I'll get into that in a minute than is shown on this plan. But given the access constraints, it's very clear to us talking to DOT and town transportation that this will be a right-in, right-out only on MLK. And the question about how this intersection is going to function, we have scaled back the non-residential appreciably from the Central West plan, but we still wanted to have a significant visual impact and community placemaking on this corner. So these would probably be 1-story buildings, but very tall 1-story buildings to give them more of a significant architectural presence. And we see, in conjunction with the connectivity plan I showed you a second ago, that this would be a great community gathering place for the entire neighborhood. Again, this place is supposed to be tying all of the disparate neighborhoods together. This is to become their little village spot where they can go hang out. The Community Design Commission had a couple of specific things that they mentioned they wanted us to look at. Confirm whether there is a stream or no stream. As Michael said, right now we've shown an amenity space over there. The tabletop next to Shadowwood is maybe a little bit over the top. We should maybe consider getting rid of that. This building 13 is perhaps, we've shown it as 4 stories in this plan, perhaps that could be lower. Building 9, they like the idea of townhouses, but it's a very long building. Is there a way to break that up? A bit more architecture along MLK. We had shown more green space. There was a comment that perhaps there needed to be a little more architecture along that to create an urban edge. And is there a way to screen this commercial parking lot a little better from Estes? And the answer is yes, we were able to achieve all of that. So this is the revised plan that we're presenting to you tonight. So what it has done is, you can see, we have now said, yes, absolutely, we have RCD. So we are respecting that with this plan. Building 13 is now 3 stories instead of 4. It was 4 before. We have eliminated the tabletop next to Coker Woods and Shadow Wood. So this is simply just a surface parking lot here that will be well screened from the neighbors. We have broken up this long townhouse building along SD, so it's 2 buildings. And notice also they're at a little bit of an angle from Estes Drive to further break up that facade. We've actually extended building 6 a bit to further help hide this parking lot in here. And we've now broken the commercial space down into 3 buildings, 3 smaller buildings, which not only creates more architecture, but we think with this space creates a great opportunity to make this pedestrian entrance gateway from the BRT stop all the way back into the site down Main Street and then back out again, which connects everything together. So those are the main changes that we have made since we've gone. Now, one thing about the airport hazard zone is it does establish some building heights as well. So this is pretty much the line where the buildings have to be below 4 stories. So we've got about a 200-foot zone next to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard where the buildings currently have to be shorter, and they are. Another way to look at this, we've got a couple of bird's eye views. So this is looking from the northwest to the southeast. Again, you can see Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in the front. You can see the entrance into the site with the BRT station out here. This is that live work building. This is where we've wrapped the building around the corner. And you can also see now that this building in the back, the building 13 I mentioned before, is much lower than the buildings next to it per the CDC's comments. And if we just flip that 180 degrees looking from the southeast to the northwest, you can see now we've got this significant amount of green space associated with the RCD. Our stormwater management would be beside that, not in it as the original plan showed. Also, think about how this open space now connects with this open space and this open space, and connects up to the Coker Woods open space and also that former Duke Power easement there. So there's lots of opportunities for connected open space, which may even lead to more trails and pedestrian connectivity, things of that nature. I think this does a good job also of representing this lower tabletop deck and how this building breaks it up a little bit. So by the numbers, what do we have? We have 355 apartment units. We have 39 townhouse units. We have roughly 21,000 square feet of the live workspace, which is the building 3. We have about 12,000 square feet of amenity space and roughly 10,000 square feet of commercial space. Like I said, primarily out on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Now, this is, from a ratio standpoint, more land use going toward residential and less toward non-residential than the Central West plan. But given the square footages and different uses, we are confident that this plan actually represents fewer car vehicle trips than the Central West plan did. And to Ms. Anderson's point, we have requested that the TIA review things like mode capture, how people can get in and out of this site, trip generation, things like that. We have not yet had a chance to review the traffic impact analysis, but our understanding is it's out there. So we look forward to be able to give that a deep dive when it comes back. And I think the other important thing, because this did go to the Housing Advisory Board, I think we do have a strong affordable housing proposal. So our proposal right now is to provide 15% of the units in the apartment buildings, the yellow buildings on the plan, as affordable units. There are 308 market rate units and 47 additional units that will be affordable, and those will be provided at an 80% AMI rate. They will be 1 and 2 bedroom apartment units. And these will be what we're calling floating units. In other words, they can move around inside these buildings over time. So they're going to be totally indistinguishable. They're going to be on any floor, any building, and they'll be able to move around over time as residents either move in and out or their financial condition changes, because could come a time where somebody qualifies now, but 5 years down the road, their financial situation is such that they don't qualify anymore. So we would then create another affordable unit somewhere else in the property. And with that, we thank you. We look forward to any comments you have. That's why we're here this evening. It's to hear your comments, to listen to you. And thank you for indulging us, and happy to answer any questions as they come up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, clarifying questions. Ms. Ryan, followed by Mr. Parker, then Mr. Boyncy.
Dan, is the power easement on your site or on the Rummel property?
I believe it's on our property.
Okay. And the Central West plan called for a greenway across the top, the northern edge of the property. Can you talk about why you decided not to do that?
Yes. We think that with the greenway / bike side path, I guess it's called, along Estes Drive, that we want folks to come into this community and experience the community. So rather than putting another greenway on the north side between this property and Shadowwood and Coker Hills, we felt a better design solution, a better placemaking solution, a better opportunity for people to experience this environment would be to create a very strong pedestrian corridor along our main street. So they would come in at the BRT or elsewhere from north and south and travel along that main street with wide pedestrian ways on both sides of that main street. But it will be made fun and safe for pedestrians and bicycles and skateboarders and segways and whoever else might be on there. So I'm up to the challenge to work that out.
Okay, good luck. And do you have any idea approximately what the canopy coverage is you're looking at?
We believe that we can still achieve the goal of 40%.
Great, thank you.
A lot of that will be replacement, but we believe we can achieve that.
Well, there's nothing there now.
That's true.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Parker, then Mr. Boyncy.
Yeah, a few things. So thanks for that presentation. Could you just go into a little bit more detail, first of all, about exactly what Live Work is and who lives and works there?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I may ask my client Ryan to chime in with that. Ryan, if you're good with that.
Yeah, it's so the concept of the Live Work essentially is a flex room on the first level, the ground level when you enter. There's a single garage space in the rear. So there'll be a full bathroom and a full flex space that's intended to be utilized for commercial purposes. As you go up one level, you'll have the main living area, and then the third level will be the bedroom area, which we envision 2 bedrooms above. So the uses for that would be, like Dan mentioned, anything from a hair salon to a small attorney's office to an engineer's office, small uses that have low demand for parking. We do have some parking on the back, some surface spaces parallel, and also in the front.
Okay, thank you. Second question, you both Michael Sewell and you referred to the airport hazard zone. Were that airport hazard zone to disappear, would you do anything differently in your design? Has the airport hazard zone significantly caused you to make certain decisions? And if that is the case, so can you talk a little bit about what impact the hazard zone has had on your project?
We looked at it initially both ways, and we've come to the conclusion that what we've drawn seems to fit regardless of either scenario. So that's the short answer.
Okay, fine. Just two other questions. One, you mentioned that this is meant to be community housing, and it's certainly, you said it's not purpose built for students, and I understand that. But we also know that students, can and do go all sorts of places. Do you plan to do anything with your leasing policies or anything else to preclude students from moving in, or is it just not built as a student housing project?
Yeah, it's not built. There's a lot of things that differentiate the Great Star project that's going up now. If you look at how that's being done, how it's furnished, how the leases are structured, it's just a completely different, how it's marketed. We don't do any of those. Ours are unfurnished. We have 66% of the units are 1 bedrooms. Students prefer 3, 4 bedroom units. We have I think 3% 3 bedrooms on the site, and those are mostly are all entirely into townhomes. So it's the amenities aren't designed for students. So there's legal limitations. We can't not lease to students, but we don't develop our program towards them.
Well, actually, if you use age restrictions, you can not lease to students. So that is something you may want to think about at some point in the future. And then my last question is just, and it just could be my inadequacies at looking at plans, but the BRT stop seems fairly short for an actual BRT stop. What's the length that you're currently contemplating?
So I can jump in on there. That station is actually drawn, the structure itself is actually drawn fairly generous. I think about 40 feet long or something like that.
It will need to be over 60 feet. We'll be using 60-foot buses.
And that will be easy to accommodate. Once we get to review the TIA, also what we'll want to figure out is if there's recommendations for a right turn lane and things like that. We'll have to weave all of that together. But we know there are other places in town where you have turn lanes and buses wanting to stop and that sort of thing. So we will we'll follow the guidance of the Chapel Hill Transit folks on how big that should be, where it should be, and what it should look like.
Sorry, one last question. Should you be unable to, for whatever reason, presumably due to DOT issues, be unable to build the roundabout, how does that affect your entry and egress and your ability to execute the project?
Yeah. It is critically important that we have a full movement access onto Estes Drive. So if not a roundabout, we requested that the folks doing the TIA also look at a potential signalized intersection or some other way to get in and out, because if the only way in and out of this project are 2 right in, right outs, that's going to be a tough one to deal with. Now, fortunately, someday there will be a connection to Somerset, but I don't think we can control that timing or depend on that happening in time for any timeline on this project.
Okay, thank you.
Just piggyback on that. It looks like on the plan that you have a potential connection into the apartment complex next door. Is that on there too? They sort of butted each other. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So in the spirit of proposed connectivity, we think that would be a good connection to have. But obviously, if the owner of the apartments next door say no way, then it won't happen.
Okay.
But we think this is seen as a focus for the neighborhood. So we're trying to do everything we can to get as much connectivity as possible.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boynton, then Ms. Gu, then Ms. Stegman, then Ms. Anderson. I'm trying to catch y'all.
I've got 2 questions. So first, I noticed there was a comment in the CDC sheet where at least one member had encouraged moving parking to underground. Was wondering if you had explored that scenario, and if you have, what's your response to that?
Yeah, that's as I said, the tabletop we're keeping, we've pushed it down, the lower level down a little bit, but the truth of the matter is underground parking is extremely expensive. I think we're the firm is the poster child for that, because we designed the Green Bridge project, and 13 years ago, those underground parking spaces averaged $40,000 a piece to construct. That being said, Ryan has actually run some numbers, and he is going to be spending a lot of money to push those parking spaces underground that we have. We will look at if we can do any more, but there's an economic reality in the Chapel Hill market of being able to afford much underground parking. But I'm not going to dismiss it. We'll take another look at that.
Got it. And then my second question is, in terms of the affordable units, how long are you thinking they would be affordable? Are you thinking that they'd be affordable for a fixed period of time or perpetuity?
So we are in our presentation to the Housing Board, we are modeling a Wood Partners program, and it seems to be an industry standard of 15 years. So that's what our proposal is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gu.
I have a question regarding the parking spaces that you mentioned. So most of hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So for the parking spaces, so what is the total number of parking spaces, both surface parking and the parking space in the deck? Do you have a number of how many parking spaces in these two arrangements?
I haven't done a recount of the parking spaces since we've done the new plan. I can get that for you.
The original one was 637 on your screen.
Yeah, we're now probably 50 or 60 under that, having eliminated the one tabletop, and actually more than that because I think we truncated the retail parking a little bit too, didn't we, Ryan?
Yeah, so we're under 600 spaces total in the 575 to 600 range, of which 220 or so are in the tabletop. So the tabletop levels 111, 110 on the ground level on Main Street, and then another 110 underneath that, which it's essentially 70% subterranean. 70% of the linear footage of that garage is underground. So it's
okay.
Subterranean as you can almost get on the site because the topography is about a 30-foot drop on the site.
I see. Okay. So for the affordable housing, you mentioned that you said you want to provide affordable housing at 80% income, the average, the median income level. So at 80%, do you mean that anyone that's below, at or below, they will all be accommodated, or what do you mean by at? Or you mean that 80% to 100%? Can you clarify what's the definition of at 80%? What's the range of that?
The qualifying, essentially the floor is 80% and the ceiling is 100%. So you would qualify
okay.
for the units if you fall.
So okay. So it's the range of between 80% to 100% AMI.
Correct.
I see. Okay, yeah, that's all my question.
Okay, Ms. Stegman, then Ms. Anderson.
A few questions. First of all, just following up on Michael's question about the roundabout. Hasn't DOT said no to that in the past, or is this a different roundabout?
It's the same roundabout. Yes.
And why do we think we might get a different answer?
You rephrased the question 3 different times and hope you get a different answer. As I said, hopefully our fallback is a signalized intersection or something else that would work. But keep in mind, it's not just this project, but we've been working closely with the YMCA to try and figure out a way to get them the relief they've needed for 40 years now of having one way in, one way out onto MLK. So we hope there's a way to figure it out, but that's all we have right now is hope.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
For the affordable housing, I want to just clarify, did you say 15 years or 50? 15 or 50?
15.
15. All right. And I think you touched on this, but I'm not sure I got it. So could you elaborate? You talked about the Central West plan called for more retail than is here, and you reduced it, but I wasn't exactly sure why. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, yes. From a pure traffic and also attractiveness of non-residential space to potential tenants, or there was a hotel was listed as a potential use, that sort of thing. The fact that there's not a full movement access onto Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and that you actually have to turn on the side street and come back in, we think is a probable fatal flaw. People have talked about, can we get a grocery store in here, whether it's an Aldi or Trader Joe's or whatever. And we've reached out to some of those folks, and once they see that we have just a right in, right out only, it's like, nope, that's not a site for us. So that's why we're now looking at making it more of a community scale retail space with smaller spaces that hopefully allow local businesses, local entrepreneurs, local retailers or businesses would be able to move into. And as I said, the other compelling reason is that if you look at the total daily car trip generation for what we're proposing, it's much less than if the Central West plan was built with its mix of uses and all the office, commercial, retail shown on that.
And the commercial space you said right now planned is 10,000 square feet, is that right?
Yes.
The mixed use, if you add the mixed use, it's about 26,000 square feet. If you're adding the live work units,
And how many live work units? Sorry.
10 units.
10 units.
And each are about 1,700 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. So I wanted to follow up on Michael's question about the height of the retail on MLK. I guess I'm not totally clear on the answer to that question, given that that's the large arterial there. So you would imagine that you would want the height to be on MLK going along the BRT. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if the airport hazard zone was completely removed, would you go up a couple stories on that side? I guess my confusion is that it's a little odd to have 3 stories on the back side with the residential and then have 1 story on the front. And the only way that I could understand that is because of the airport hazard zone. And so if that's removed, then to me, from an urban design standpoint, it would just make more sense to me to have the height on the front.
Well, we'd like as Ryan said, we think we have a good plan. If the airport hazard zone is removed, we think we'd like to still move with this, but we would like to hear the council's counsel on that. If you all think there need to be taller buildings along MLK, we can certainly take a look at that. It's been a kind of a give and take. I think you all remember, most of you, not all of you, about a year ago, I was involved in another concept plan on this site, which was unabashedly student housing with a little bit of commercial. And the conversation during that one was, your buildings are too tall on MLK, can't you make them a little shorter? So, let us know your thoughts.
Well, Dan, I'm not trying to mess with your mind or anything.
It's easy to mess with my mind.
The only reason I'm asking is because you go up to 3 and 4 behind. So, but yeah, I'll reserve comments.
Appreciate the comment.
So my next question is about the affordable housing. I'm wondering why it's only in the apartments and not necessarily sprinkling some in the the live work units and the townhomes.
So it's really a function that the townhomes in buildings 8, 9, 10, and 11, the ones that front the tabletop, are are very expensive to build. The tabletop itself is expensive to build. So the concept there is, and as well, the units on by the RCD. So the concept there is we're building them in a large, primarily as a urban planning technique to hide the tabletop, and there's just it's an expensive component. So our proposal is on the flats on the majority of the units, which is 300, I believe it's 340 units flats, which is the majority of the units. So the townhomes are not the majority of the unit types.
Yeah, understood. Well, you're also at 80 to 100%, which is not a particularly low AMI, right? So, well, again, I'm venturing into comments. My next question is, have y'all worked at all with Whit Rummel on coordinating his potential plans for his property, integrating it in with what you're trying to do?
I've had multiple discussions with them, and we have talked about the connectivity, and that's why we have connectivity. It's one reason we do. Obviously, it's something he wants. So we're open to it and have worked with him, and we'll work with him in the future.
Okay, and I mean the other part of that is the not just connectivity, but coming in and out, right? So that'll be interesting. And my final question, I think, is probably more for the staff than the applicant. So Michael or Maurice or somebody, could you help me understand why we haven't waited for the TIA so that we could give the applicant maybe some more, some higher quality feedback? I feel like we're shooting in the dark a little bit on this one without the TIA. So I'm just wondering if we have the TIA in hand and we just have to analyze it, why are we off on that?
So typically for concept plans, we don't have the TIA in advance. We do on some occasions, but typically we don't. I know that the TIA is in process currently, but we don't have a completed draft of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, Pam, you can like slap my hand later. I'm going to venture into a comment, which is that this is like a perfect example of why our concept plan needs a little bit of a rethought, because I think particularly for this kind of project where we're talking about SDs and this being so tricky, I think particularly when it would have been a couple weeks, I'm gonna advocate for rethinking kind of our timing. And Michael, that is not your fault. So I don't mean to make this a criticism of you in particular. I just think we as a town have to really think about how we maybe do this a little bit better so that the applicant can get better feedback from us and the public can come along. So I'll get in trouble for that one comment, and now I'm done.
Mr. Nguyen, did you have any clarifying questions?
Nope, just comments.
Okay, I'm going to read some of the questions from the chat that we've gotten, and then I'll ask a couple of my own. From Juan Chang, you plan several pedestrians try to directly go to, I can't read this, Shadowwood, Somerset neighborhood. What's the detail? This project's on small land. You plan over 400 units. Sorry. How do you deal with the problem with no parking lot? You want to use street parking. I'm not sure I can, sorry, the typing's a little hard to figure out. Okay, balance for the community.
Mayor, if you'd like, I'm actually looking at the chat right now.
Okay, thank you.
It's a little bit, so a couple of specific things that I can address, I understand. Street parking, so these would be on the streets that we're creating within the neighborhood. We're not proposing street parking on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard or ST Drive, heaven forbid, just to clarify that. Small land, huge square feet of building. I think what I'd like to put in perspective is some of the Blue Hill multifamily projects have as many as 350 units on 1/3 the acreage of this property. So, that's just a comment to put density in perspective. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. From Amy Witzel, what is the height of building number 13 in feet?
Ryan, that's a 3-story building?
Building 13 in feet would be under 35 feet.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I mean, you typically average 10 feet per floor. Is that kind of rough
Yeah.
guess? Add a little bit on the top, yeah.
It depends on the roof system, if it's a gable or if it's a flat roof. And yeah, generally under 35 feet.
I was going to ask a clarifying question. Was there a reason on the commercial properties that you broke them into 3 separate buildings? Would it be any advantageous to have 2 of those buildings connected to each other so that you have a sense of commercial space? And then is there any opportunity for rooftop gathering on those buildings in your perspective?
I think the response to those is maybe and yes. One of I think the advantages of doing the 3 smaller buildings is you creating all of these outdoor spaces in between the buildings, the plazas, the courtyards, that sort of thing. So again, if we can have, you know, this great little neighborhood village center with lots of outdoor dining opportunities, gathering opportunities, those chance encounters that people have. Normally, commercial developers, and you can tell Ryan isn't one, they want to do just one big building because it's cheaper to build. In this case, he's trying to create a great space for people to gather.
I would just add by doing the 3 buildings, you're adding end caps. So the end caps are the most valuable part of retail. So by having 3 buildings, you have 6 end caps. With the 2 buildings, you have 4. There's also operational benefits and architectural. With the building split into 3, you can put the operating doors on the inside, so you can maximize the architectural effect on the sites, on the sides that you want to maximize. So it's a combination of architecturally beneficial, and it's also better for the market to have end caps, patios, coffee shop, restaurant, all those. Everyone prefers an end cap with a patio.
Oh, true. Okay. There's another question from the audience from Marsha Vaughn. Can you expand on the comment that there will eventually be a connection to Somerset Drive?
Sure. So the Central West Plan shows an east-west street connecting Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to Somerset Drive. As Mr. Stewart has said, he has worked with the neighboring property owner, Whit Rummel, so that we will build the street on this property, and Mr. Rummel or whoever develops this property will build the street connecting over to Somerset. As I understand it, and again, this would go back to the co-chairs of the Central West Plan, the idea was to create some vehicular connectivity to keep cars from necessarily having to go out on STs.
Okay. We're going to turn it over for the public to make their comments, and then we'll come back for council comments. We're going to try this. Mr. Parker is going to help us out. We'll call the first 2 names, get the first person in, let them speak, and then get the next 2 on board ready to go. It does take a few moments to transition between folks, and I know there's a couple people who are wanting to share presentations as well, and that will be a new learning experience for us this evening. So, Mr. Parker, who do you have signed up, please?
Okay, first is Chris Burnt representing the CDC, followed by Scott Buck. And since Chris is representing the CDC tonight, she is not subject to the 3-minute limit. But for all of our other speakers, I would remind you in advance that we do have a 3-minute limit per speaker, and I will be reminding you as you speak of your time.
Thank you.
Chris? Amy? Anybody?
Am I here?
You're here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. I'm Chris Burnt. I'm Vice Chair of the Community Design Commission. We met on February 25th. Susanna, our chair, recused herself as part of the development team. We looked at the original plan you saw tonight that the staff presented, so we did not see the revised plan. Nevertheless, I think a lot of our comments still are relevant. The first major one is that we agreed there was a need for a significant landscape buffer between the development and Coker Hills and Shadowwood. There's a very small buffer on the back. I do see the tabletop has been removed, and I would imagine the commission would think that's a plus, but we had wanted a more significant landscape buffer in the back. Our second point had to do with traffic, and you've talked about that already. We think that the number of units and traffic is going to be essential to consider for this project at this congested intersection. We were somewhat concerned about the lack of significant rentals. Retail space being fairly small, there were several concerns about whether that was really viable for the site. We were also concerned about the tabletop parking decks abutting units, the buildings 8 and 9, where the deck is right up against the buildings. So we wanted to see how that would work in practice from a design perspective. And we did ask, as Councilmember Busani said, to look at putting parking underground if possible. But I think removing the tabletop in the back is definitely a step in by the adjoining property would be a step in the right direction. We also were concerned about reviewing the facades that would face the main streets. A lot of the buildings were, the ends of the building were facing major roads. So we wanted to have careful review of those facades. And we also actually had the idea of turning the live work units to move along MLK rather than be just perpendicular to it, so that the live work would be actually on the road. So that's another idea for consideration. But in general, we thought that this plan was much better than the plan we previously reviewed, the first plan. The height is better, 3 to 4 stories. We were still concerned about the number of units, which are actually more than the previous plan, number of residential units, and the overall scale of the project, especially as it related to traffic, which is a big unknown. So thank you.
Okay. Next up is Scott Buck, followed by Fred Lampa, and I'll remind you again, 3 minutes, please.
So Scott, you may unmute yourself and show your video if you wish.
There we go.
Okay. All right, good evening, thank you. I live at 208 Huntington Drive, which is well within the 1,000-foot notification buffer. My wife and I have attended the community design meetings and the Housing Advisory Board meetings at which this project has been proposed. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for your stewardship of the community and your attention this evening. I appreciate the modifications that have been made along the way as this project has evolved. I do remain concerned regarding the overall scale and size of this plan. And I think there are still issues in terms of the scale and size in terms of the Central West guiding principles. I'm very concerned about the right-only traffic egress and entrance on MLK, because absent that small number of folks, everybody else is going to be coming through Estes. And that's going to be a huge traffic burden. And I know you're awaiting the analysis. I would just add to that we have 150 new senior residents who will be moving in soon at the Azalea Estates. And so whatever the traffic analysis data is, it's already going to be late and incomplete because of this new influx of drivers there. But I'm very concerned about the traffic, not only from a congestion standpoint, but a safety standpoint. And then switching gears in my remaining time, I'm concerned that there's not enough attention to community, compatibility, and respect for existing neighborhoods. And I say that as evidenced by the plan's negative aesthetic and environmental impact upon the neighbors. Until this evening, we had seen no streetscape views, and I would actually ask for a true streetscape view not an oblique view that really shows how stark those buildings along Estes will appear. And I think that would be part of the appropriate analysis. I'm also concerned that the dumpster and compactor is actually closer to 5 of my street neighbors than 50% of the development's residents. That's where the utilities in terms of trash and recycling. And I don't think that's actually good neighborly development. And the buffer, a vegetative buffer proposed between this and neighbors is described as a goal to install plants that over time will lead to a buffer. I take that as a vague, soft, and unenforceable promise at best. So I do appreciate, though, the interim attention to that intermittent stream and how that has impacted the plan. But in closing, I'm still concerned about scale and size and what's in the best interest of our community, not necessarily the developer, but our community in terms of how many apartments do we need and where do we need them and the density in these locations. I thank you again for your attention and your stewardship.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Fred Lampa, followed by Tom Henkel.
Fred, you're still muted.
There we go.
Okay,
You with us, Fred? You can.
I can see you. Can you see me?
No, you haven't. Your video is not. Doesn't appear to be on.
Start video. Okay, got it.
There he is.
All right. Hello, I'm Fred Lampa and a resident of Coker Hills that travels on Estes nearly daily. I also participated in almost all of the Central West Small Area Plan meetings in 2012, all the way through almost the end of 2013. It seems to me that council will have a difficult task making useful recommendations at this time about the Aura concept plan and proposed density because of the lack of a completed traffic study. Why is a study important? The Central West Plan did a detailed traffic study and found that based on the recommended 175 residential units for parcel A, which is the Butler property Aura development, there will be trips leaving or entering the property every 14 seconds during evening rush hour, assuming the trips are evenly spaced. Otherwise, they could be even more jammed up. With more than twice the Central West Plan residential density in this Aura plan, if adopted, that will make more trips that will occur every 5 seconds. As those of you that have traveled Estes during rush hour know, westbound traffic frequently backs up to Estes Elementary and occasionally all the way to Franklin. Adding to the stream of cars from Aura will further impact on this already overcapacity section of road. Only the current traffic study can determine if the proposed Aura housing density is viable. Please ask the manager to schedule additional time for evaluation of Aura density based on projected traffic from the TIA. And I do have a comment for Mr. Jewell, and that is that whereas his comment is correct, it's also incorrect. There will be more concentrated traffic as a result of people, lots of residences going and coming from work, whereas the plan for Central West had traffic spread throughout the day. You may have had a total number of more trips, but the traffic with lots of residences is concentrated, coming and going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom Henkel, followed by Tim O'Shea. And Tom has an image he wishes to share, which should be interesting.
Okay.
There you
Hello,
go.
Tom.
You got me?
Got you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. So I'm Tom Henkel. I'm a resident of Mount Bolus Road, which is right on the edge of the Central West planning area. And I followed the Central West planning process back in 2012. I'd like to share a slide with you. Let's see if we can put this on. See if I can find it just a second. Well, forget it.
You were going to be up first.
Well, I've got a slide separately, but I've got to put it in the right place, so I'll forget the slide.
I'll try to show it.
Well, it was shown earlier, and let me. I think I can make one. There we go. This is what I want you to see right down here. Okay. All right. The original small area plan had in this parcel A 175 units, 145,000 square feet of commercial space, with a total of about 310,000 square feet. The latest plan from ARA that I read tonight, you're going to have a total of 505,200 square feet. That's 163% of what the small area plan envisioned for that site. Also, the small area plan thought that the total number of residences for Central West would be about 620 units. You've got 394 residential units right in parcel A. So that's 64% of the entire plan, small area plan. So, you know, we're lumping, and that's not going to leave much room for adjacent properties to do their thing. And C, parcel C, which is the senior residential, that's 152 units right there. So Whit Ronald's going to want to do something in B, and then D across the street, E across the street. E, there's already a property at section E, which is for sale. I know that Richardson, who owns a large parcel down there, has got some plans. So it appears to me that the Aurora plan is taking up a big piece of the pie. In fact, when you look at the ratio of the total square footage for Aurora plan compared to Central West, it's 57% of the allocated building space and 64% of the residential space. So the problems that I see are going to happen, Fred already mentioned it, you're going to have an awful lot of traffic coming in along Estes. I personally don't think you really ought to be planning development until we know what the plans are for Estes. Estes is going to have to be widened.
Thank you.
You've got a lot of work to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim O'Shea, followed by Jennifer Thompson.
Unmute, start video. Okay.
Here you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim O'Shea. My wife and toddler and I live together on Huntington. And I'm excited to join this evening to say that, you know, I'm excited about the possibilities of new development on this lot right around the corner. But we're very concerned about the safety implications of the plan, and also troubled by how drastically out of step this plan and its implications for traffic seem to be with the town's public sentiment expressed in the last few community surveys. So I think, you know, it's clear that the plan would generate much more traffic than the area can safely absorb. Estes barely supports current traffic, and indeed DOT data shows that Estes is overused. And that's even before people move into Azalea Estates. So a safety problem is going to turn into an inevitable disaster when that happens. By that, I mean children hit by cars or emergency services being unable to get through traffic to seniors at Azalea, not just the fender benders that we're all going to have to live with if this plan or something like it goes through. So I was very concerned to see that the TIA scope didn't use the word safety once, even though safety is an essential element of such a complex traffic challenge. Now, on the flip side, the proposal doesn't offer meaningful benefits that are of the sort that I was excited by. There's very little retail as a proportion of the overall development. And as someone with a community development background, I'm disappointed to say that the affordable housing provisions seem very meager. I support affordable housing in my neighborhood, not just credits for development somewhere else, but in my neighborhood. But what we're seeing here is pretty meager. And against that backdrop, I would just point out a few pertinent points from the last community survey released in January. I wasn't surprised that the survey showed that the residents love living here and are very happy almost across the board with town services, with one glaring exception, and that was traffic flow management. Of all the services, that's where public satisfaction is currently lowest, and it's the service that residents have rated as their single greatest priority for remediation by town leaders. And it's an area where public satisfaction has worsened over the years, as the last few surveys make clear. And lastly, it's the area where Chapel Hill performs worst compared to national and area peers. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to getting together sometime.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you for the signs.
My pleasure. It's what I do. Jennifer Thompson, followed by John Mitchell.
How do I stop?
Sorry. Unmuted by host. Hello there. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you, but not see you.
Okay, well, we'll just go for it. Sorry, I can't get that going right now, but hi, my name is Jennifer Thomason. Thank you so much for your time.
Seem to have lost Ms. Thomason.
And so my husband and I and our two daughters, we live at 203 Somerset Drive. We moved here about 7 years ago. And I think tonight I just wanted to say I agree with those who have already spoken in my community about our greatest concern just being the traffic flow. As a mom and as one who's trying to leave during peak hours to get children to school, turning left outside of Somerset is extremely challenging in the mornings and in the evenings when I am taking children to YMCA and different evening activities. Trying to get out of Somerset onto Estes to me is extremely challenging. It is at times very dangerous. I have to take risks in order to turn left, there are many blind spots when traffic is backed up to MLK. And having a daughter who will be 16 next year and getting her license, as a mom, I am a concerned parent for my children's safety as they are driving in on the roads. We have been disappointed. We're excited also about the development that's going on in our town, and we are pro-development. However, with the Azalea Estates community coming in soon as it's developed, I too would like that to be considered in the traffic studies, as those residents and staff will be using Somerset to come in and out of that residence. That will only increase traffic on our street. And I know when that development was going in, I attended other meetings about, our asking for a traffic circle or a traffic light, and was very disappointed when that was not approved. So it's disheartening to hear that in this new development, you all are proposing a traffic circle onto Estes from the apartments, but not from
Somerset, where all of us have been living for many years, and would just like to be able to safely exit our street. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your efforts and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Mitchell, followed by Jason Clayton.
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. John Mitchell, also a resident of the Somerset neighborhood. I'd like to echo Ms. Anderson's comment, or maybe it was a question, that there's something backwards about the concept plan process where what seems like a critical input, maybe a gating issue or a driver of what sort of design is feasible on the property is traffic. Yet the first council meeting where feedback is given on the concept plan, there's no data or analysis provided by the developer team on traffic and what's realistic. So it's from the perspective of somebody in the public who wants to comment on it, it does feel like we're flying blind here. There's not a whole lot to comment on until we see an analysis to evaluate. Secondly, I wanted to just provide a little more detail from the perspective of someone who drives these roads, or before coronavirus, drove these roads daily. On Estes, the issue is mostly westbound approaching the intersection. And as I think Fred said, it's very typical at rush hour for traffic to back up past Somerset all the way to the schools or beyond. And that means people going westbound toward the MLK Estes intersection have to wait, say, 3 to 5 cycles of the traffic light to get to the intersection, quite a long time. MLK, you shouldn't forget there's similar issues on MLK. I regularly drive southbound on MLK toward Estes and have to turn left. There's a left turning lane in the center. And traffic in that turning lane often backs up to or past the crosswalk opposite Shadowwood Apartments. So on both of the street frontages of the Butler property, it's typical for traffic to back up the entire length of the property and significantly beyond it. So it's literally a gridlocked property at certain hours of the day. And I'm trying to figure out how adding a traffic circle is going to alleviate that or mitigate that, except for the people coming out of the property. I get that, but if you're coming from downstream, let's say from Somerset or the schools, any traffic coming into the circle from the property is going to further delay your trip to the intersection. Maybe a zero-sum situation. So just in closing, I think we need to start from the premise that there may be no clear solution to the traffic problem. And that should be treated as an upfront constraint on the level of density that's possible for this parcel. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Clayton, followed by Julie McClintock.
Hi, my name is Jason Clayton, and my wife and our kids live in Hidden Hills, which is about a mile down Estes from the subject property. And I'm here to express my concern with the scale of this development in the absence of independent analyses that prove that Trinsic and Aura will be a net benefit to the town and its residents. As a Chapel Hill resident, I support development, especially ones that provide for additional housing, have a net positive financial impact on the town's finances, help to create more commercial tax revenue for the town of Chapel Hill, which we sorely need, and do not create a burden on the surrounding communities. And it's this last item that I would like to address more fully. Per NCDOT, the intersection of North Estes Drive and MLK sees an average daily annual traffic volume of 15,000 cars. And this is a volume closer to what is typical on larger 4-lane roads in town. The capacity for North Estes is 11,600. So as it stands today, North Estes is significantly over capacity already. Adding one more car only pushes the existing roadway further over capacity. And regardless of the plan, if it's 640 spaces or plus or minus 600 spaces, Trinsic is proposing significantly more parking spaces, which will lead to more cars on Estes and on MLK. And I'm not exactly sure why we're having this discussion premature or before the TIA has been published and available both to council and to the residents who will be significantly impacted by the development at this corner. And it's also worth noting, and it's come up a couple times here, that North Estes is the home to Estes Elementary School and Guy Phillips Middle School, where our children go to school, including my 2 girls. So increased congestion with a potential risk for safety to our children should be a non-starter until we have better answers as it relates to traffic and how it will be mitigated along Estes Drive. I think we also need to be honest about how transportation is used in Chapel Hill and in surrounding communities. Public transit and bike racks are going to solve this problem for us. People are going to use this roadway. And if we can make the investments in Estes Drive such that it can support capacity or the needs of that corner, then that would, I'm all for it. But until we are certain or have some level of certainty that the TIA can either give suggestions or that we can, that Estes can support this, then I'm not exactly sure why we're having this conversation right now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie McClintock, followed by Juan Shang.
Hey.
Julie.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear and see you.
Great. Good. I washed my hair for the occasion. Good to see all of you. So I'm going to try to wrap everything up here. As you know, I was on the Central West Steering Committee for a year, and there have been many plans for this parcel since it became a tree farm. This newest concept brings improved design elements. However, despite these improvements, there are many factors that weigh against rezoning this parcel at this time. We encourage you to tell the applicant to resubmit a plan that addresses the following very serious concerns that we've heard tonight. First, there's simply too much density in this plan for the town to sustain and keep traffic moving on Estes Drive. Chapel Hill spent over a year of staff time and burned hundreds of hours of citizen input on developing a plan for this whole area. A citizen committee delved into the details of every parcel and examined the area infrastructure. And of course, we know that Amy and Michael Parker were very much part of this effort. Tom Henkel said tonight that what is proposed is 2.5 times what the small area plan recommended for this parcel. Please direct the applicant to meet the Central West small area plan adopted by the council. Second, any plan must meet limited mobility conditions on Estes Drive. This is a major east-west artery, we've heard, and the corridor cannot be widened. That's at least the study that we got back when we looked into it. Therefore, any rezoning must accommodate to the current conditions. The town cannot force fit 20 pounds of potatoes into a 10-pound sack, even if the town happens to like the quality of the potato very much, like affordable housing or better designed parking. Even during normal school opening and closing time, Estes Drive has become known to back up from MLK all the way to Franklin. Finally, the third problem with this and challenge of this particular parcel is its location. The physical constraints of this parcel are huge and insurmountable, maybe even. Yes, the parcel is flat, but it is quite narrow in width, greatly reducing any chance of a viable entrance from MLK. Because it is a corner property close to one of the town's major intersections, access is a major hurdle. Any proposed design will cause dangerous turning movements only feet away from a busy intersection during rush hour, endangering everyone using this busy road. Finally, please reevaluate your recommendations again after the TIA is processed. If the traffic problem cannot be addressed, you must ultimately turn down any application that resembles the features of this concept plan. Thank you very much, and thank you all for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I'm pronouncing this remotely correctly. Zhuan Chang, followed by Hang Zhan. Okay, we ready to go?
You're unmuted.
Yeah.
We still can't hear anything that you're saying. Are you able to share with us?
What if we move to the next speaker and come back once they've gotten a chance to get some technical assistance?
We can certainly try that. Amy, can we hear how the Hang Zhan? If you could unmute.
Hi, this is Hong. Yeah, I have like similar concern about the traffic because every day we drove through the Estes Drive during school hours. It's very jammed. So yeah, like we think, yeah, I think traffic issue is a major concern for this concept plan. Yeah, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Can we try?
Zhuan Chang.
Yeah, I'm here. I learned a lot. Thank you. I'm a little concerned our I live in Woodcock, Cockwoods. I'm a little concerned our homes safe. If they have some plan to make our neighborhood safe like this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those are all the folks that I have who signed up. Amy, are there any other folks?
There's a chat question again from Amy Witzel. I'm a resident of Coker Woods. She's still talking about the pedestrian access. Dan, if you could share, the easement surrounding Coker Woods is heavily wooded and access to the street would cross private property. Can you help me understand where you're talking about the pedestrian access in more detail?
Yes, I can speak to that. Again, this is a concept plan, and following what we saw loud and clear with the Central West Plan in terms of providing a central place with good neighborhood connectivity. We've suggested those pedestrian connections. Certainly, if if Coker Woods and the surrounding neighborhoods don't want those pedestrian connections, then we won't build them. But we'd like to hear everybody's input on that, including the council.
Dan, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I served on the Greenways Commission a long time ago, and we had long looked at that Duke easement run as a greenway connection from Timberline all the way down pretty extensively. And I know that that was, it's on the map somewhere, but is that where you're talking about connecting into? Is that particular greenway? Is that what you're thinking?
I believe that's the one. We'll double check, but I think that's approximately where it is, yes.
Okay. We had one more question from the audience, Timothy Carr. And he's raised his hand. Amy, can you help bring him in, please?
Working on it.
Thank you. There we are. We see you.
Hi there. My name is Tim Carr, and I am Senior Vice President for Property, Facilities, and Risk Management with the YMCA of the Triangle area. And as you know, our main Chapel Hill Carrboro branch campus is located at 980 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, just south of the site. And I just wanted to affirm that we have reviewed the proposed development plan with the development team. And the roundabout on Estes Drive does align with our future secondary drive. So that roundabout location is consistent with our master plan as submitted to the town for the Chapel Hill Carrboro Y campus. And the roundabout would definitely provide improved access to our facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to bring it back for council comments, please. Since the hour is getting a little bit late, I'm going to ask you not to repeat your own council's colleagues' comments, just share your own. Oh, we're going to start with Mr. Wynn down there. Let's go with that, and then Ms. Ryan.
Thank you. I definitely think the concept plan we were presented tonight is an improvement upon what was said in our packet. So props to the development team for responding to some of the input they've been given. Some of the concerns I had, the traffic is definitely, I think, a concern. I would like to know why the development team, if that roundabout has been rejected in the past, like if there's specific reasoning why they think it'll be approved now, because I think that's a key component. Also for the affordable housing, I know the housing board also said this, but would like to see more of the units being aimed at 60% AMI, especially if, 15% is kind of our base that we try to get from developers. So if that's all we're getting, especially if we're not getting any of the ownership units from the townhomes, would like to see the rentals being targeted at 60% AMI. Also, the 15 years of affordability, would like to see that extended to 30 years. And if the project does move forward, we'd like to see different scenarios. Obviously numbers are a thing. So playing with, around with numbers of units, with term of affordability and percentage of AMI that it could be targeted at. And then I also do agree with Councilmember Anderson about it being a little weird, being 1 story on MLK and then 3-story abutting the residential. So if, I guess, potentially moving up a level on MLK would be good, especially since we've shown interest in extending our downtown down MLK in the future. And yeah, that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ryan, then Mr. Boyncey, are you ready?
Okay. First of all, to the development team, thank you for looking at the Central West plan and referencing it. There was a lot of community blood, sweat, and tears that went into that, so we appreciate you doing that. I like many of the changes that I've seen. Like others, I share concern about the traffic generation and the density. I think an excellent point was made that you guys are taking a lot of the density for the area at this point, and so we have to, as a community, figure out how all that gets allocated. I think that the circulation and egress are also going to be an issue. I hope that Mr. Rummel can be brought, that you all can work out something where there's egress onto Somerset. I think that would be a big benefit to everybody. I'll echo Mayor Hemminger's comment about the Timberline Trail. I think that since that is a potential north-south connecting trail in town, I'd very much like to see that be made an explicit part of this, not just kind of some green land, but that the trail could actually continue through here. In terms of the design, thank you for No Texas Donuts. That is greatly appreciated. I think I agree with Ms. Anderson about the lack of height on MLK. Even if it's going to be a problem getting enough retail in here, there certainly could be residential over it that maybe could convert sometime to commercial, but I think 1 story in this day and age, especially on a major arterial, is too low. I think that there needs to be a little bit of rethinking about the design of that entry area, just to make sure that we're creating a real community space that's as activated as possible. I think that you're making inroads into getting better connections with that BRT stop, because that's going to be your real driver bringing folks in. So just think a little bit more about that and how that kind of community green can evolve here. Let's see, I think that I like that you're doing the affordable housing component. I'd like to see the lower AMI, and I think 15 years is too short. And I think the other thing is the view into the tabletop isn't inspiring at this point. I like the fact that you're doing that and hiding it with the townhomes, but for residents, I don't know if there's any way to plant that. I know over at East 54, they do some planting on top of parking decks. So just think about that as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyncey, followed by Ms. Gu.
I'm going to do my best not to echo my council colleagues here. Agree with what all of them have said so far. The traffic congestion is a big concern for me, and it's hard for me to really figure what proper traffic mitigation measures can be taken to alleviate that problem. Particularly if a roundabout can't be done. And of course, we want to see, what the reasoning is for, say, a roundabout versus something else, given the current state of things during rush hour along that stretch of road. I would prefer a longer term for the affordable rentals than 15 years. That seems way too short. And then, certainly a lower AMI as well. 80%, I mean, that's still not meeting some of the great need we have in terms of affordability. I think I heard in the presentation about the community gathering space, it being along Martin Luther King Boulevard. I mean, right now that road is quite busy. Cars are traveling at high speeds. Certainly, would want some more thought put into how to make a community gathering space there something that's going to be immune from having the background of fast-moving cars there. Yeah, that sums up my comments right now.
Thank you, Ms. Gu, followed by Ms. Anderson.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I on? Oh, okay. Well, I think that, I think one of the concerns that has been brought up by multiple commentators as well as the council members is the traffic conditions. And we all know that it is a very difficult corner and on this in a challenging corridor. We all have experienced those traffic situations on Estes Drive. So, at least in the short term, when this project is built, I think it will add significant traffic load on that intersection as well to the Estes Drive. But I think the situation is not unique for this project. Last week we talked about this the town's planning for office buildings and the parking decks on the Rosemary and the MLK intersection. I think overall, the town's traffic situation, we need to, or at least in the long term, we need to develop this the east-west grid system, and so far that it's just lacking at this time. So I'm hoping that this project will take a long-term development of the town into consideration. What kind of grid system across different mode traffic. That it will take that into consideration, so that in the long term we will have a solution to address the congestion at that intersection. But at this time, I just cannot see that what kind of mitigation we are able to implement over there in order to accommodate the level of development and the density that is being proposed in this project. So I think I would like to see that, or if the developer can show that how their design will or has take the town's long-term development or the traffic management into its consideration. So I think that would be an important point that to make. I would like to see that. It's not only for this project. I think it's also for other projects in the future. I would like to see that we are taking steps to alleviate the congestions and putting a grid of the street system set into place. Otherwise, we will run into the same problems over and over again. So this is for the traffic, and another is for the affordable housing. I think that given our plan for the North-South BRT on MLK, I think that this is a corridor that we are hoping that we will have the affordable housing to have easy access to public transit. We're hoping that it has easy access to retail or commerce, so that the people living in this corridor, they will have access to work, to commerce, or to travel into different parts of the town without a car. So I think that is our vision, and I think that if we all committed to that, I'm hoping that we will be able to accommodate a wider range of affordability. I think 80 to 100%, this is a very narrow range. I think for our vision of trying to create this community that we all think that will accommodate different diversities, different people, different income brackets, I think it's not enough. I'm hoping that we can do more in that. And then I think there are things that in this project I think I really like the proposal for the pedestrian and the bike lanes or connections. I think that I think it is a significant improvement from the previous versions that we have seen on this property. And I think this idea of breaking down this townhome along the Estes Drive into smaller buildings and have them stacked onto each other instead of a very long building, I think that's a great idea. Well, I echo several other council members with regard to the commercial arrangement on this project. Given this very prominent location of this project, I feel like so far, or at least I do not see a vision for a vibrant community. I just feel like there's not enough activation over there. Well, especially if after the North-South BRT is built, I think this is a very prominent location and a traffic node, and I'm hoping that to see more facilities that the entire community can get access to, not only for this project, but also for the town. I mean, I'm hoping that there is some significant presence of commercial development that will be fit with the location of this project.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, then Ms. Stegman, and then Mr. Parker.
Thank you. I do want to say that I feel like this project has certainly improved since the last time we saw it. I don't remember all the things that we saw last time because we've seen a lot of things in between now and then that have nothing to do with this. But I do feel I feel like the urban design is better. I agree that I like some of the internal buildings being broken up so they don't feel like huge long facades. It feels greener. And I just think overall the urban design is better. You all on the development team know that you're going to have to deal with the traffic. I've already said that I would love to integrate this conversation when the TIA comes back to understand what that looks like. I personally believe, as someone who waits for my husband to get home down Estes so that I can go to closed sessions early, that I don't think I need a TIA to know that you're going to have to reduce something. I don't think that you're going to be able to fit all this in there and still get that road to work. But I am glad that that somebody else gets to study that and not me. I'm assuming you're going off a market analysis, but I'm disappointed to see less retail, not more. But I understand that potentially you don't feel like you can fill it, but I do feel like it would be a benefit to people who live there, as well as people taking the BRT to be able to stop there and really have a vibrant retail option there. And I will not repeat, but I do think that the affordable housing component needs to be bolstered. You have a lot of residential units there, and 80 to 100% is not really that big a concession. And I think 15 years is just not long enough. So I think that AMI needs to go down, and I would love to see that integrated into some of the ownership options as well. And the live work units would be an amazing option, I think, for that. But I know that's a little further down the road, but I do see improvements. And of course, the traffic is the big thing. And you've heard that a million times, but that is a huge concern. So, but thank you for the improvements. And I really do think it looks better. And Brian Peterson, I know you have an excellent urban designer, but we also have one who might be able to add some ideas there in terms of internal connectivity or anything else. It would be great to get his comments as well. But thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Ms. Stegman, then Mr. Parker.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I think I more or less agree with what has been said. The one thing, one and a half things I'll focus on a little bit is, this is really, it is an improvement in a lot of ways, but, being on the BRT line and the location is, this is really where we want transit-oriented development. And I just don't think it checks all the boxes. It checks some of them, but sort of the live, work, play, getting people out of cars is just not quite there. And I think part of that is more retail. I think, I understand what you're saying about less retail means less cars, but I see it differently. I think if there's usable retail there, people aren't going to drive. They will walk to the coffee shop and to whatever kind of retail you can get there. And we want to make it so people are not getting in their cars, and even moving it more, understand having some right by MLK, but also having some more in the middle, so people aren't driving from one side of the community to the other to get their coffee. I mean, that's the last thing you want. So having it mixed in more, if that's possible, I think is definitely better. Just more of that mix of uses. It's really a residential development, I think, for the most part right now, which is not kind of what we're ideally gonna have there. Obviously, all the traffic that has been well covered is a concern, and affordable housing has been said, but I'll say it too. 60% and under has to be, and much longer, 30 plus years for the duration of that. I like that it's, what's the term, floating. I think that's great. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Mr. Parker?
Thank you. So I'll try to be relatively brief. I agree with much of, not all of what has been said, particularly in terms of the affordable housing. The traffic is clearly a concern. The TIA, once we have the TIA and other data, we'll be able to make some decisions about it, and just we'll have to, see how it goes. But certainly traffic is a concern. As I mentioned earlier, if the roundabout doesn't happen, it becomes way worse than just a concern. One of the things that we were trying to do in Central West, we talked about, was making this into a destination, not just for the folks who would live in this development, but for the people in the surrounding area. And I think coupling that with the notion of transit-oriented development, while I think overall the development isn't bad, it is not a destination. There's really nothing there that's going to draw people from the surrounding areas to this place. We often talk about we want people to walk and bike, but we also know that we need places for people to walk and bike to. And this really doesn't provide that. I understand, the challenges posed by Carolina North not happening in any time near in the foreseeable future, and that the presence of Carolina North and the demand it would have created was clearly a linchpin of the Central West plan. But I think, we need to do a better job making this into an attractive destination. One of the folks who spoke earlier talked about the community benefit and what is it doing for the community. And I think we need to pay more attention to that. Not only would this development potentially be a good place for people who live there to live, but we want to make it an asset to the entire area with places that people can go, places that people can bike to, places that people can walk to. So I really urge you to think about that. That I think segues into something Ms. Anderson mentioned earlier about the height and density on MLK. I think, if we can do more, some retail, but also then look at 2 or 3 story buildings on MLK, if not certainly pure retail, but either offices, maybe some interesting office space, community office spaces, or, worst case, offloading some of the residential. But I think, 1-story buildings, even if they're tall 1-story buildings on MLK, is not really what we're trying for, particularly as we think about transit-oriented development. 2 other points. I know you've dropped the parking, but nearly 600 spaces for 350 or 380 odd units seems like an awful lot of parking. I understand the challenges that go with retail, but when I look at this, even, that you park, the cars on the street, you've gotten rid of the tabletop, which is great. But when you look at this, I see an awful lot of places for cars and fewer places for people. I think this still has a way to go to become more human-oriented and less car-oriented. And finally, one last point, actually 2 points. One point is that while I understand both from a market perspective and perhaps even, not desiring students there, having very few 3-bedroom apartments, but that also means that this is not going to be a development that's congenial to families. And I think, as we've seen the growth of multifamily in Chapel Hill, I think we're not accommodating families. And I would urge that we have some larger apartments that will allow for families, and then building amenities, playgrounds or things like that. I think that it's a great location. There's schools right there. So it ought to be an attractive location for people to raise their kids. And then lastly, I would like some attention paid to doing some things beyond just the nature of the development that would make sure that this is a community-oriented housing development and not one that will be overtaken by students relatively quickly. We saw that with Carolina Square. It was presented to the town as more residential, and it's now almost 100% students. So in spite of the fact that at least in theory, it wasn't designed for that. So that's something else I'd like to see looked into. I think, from a design perspective, it certainly is better than it's been, and it's certainly the best project I've seen, for that site, but I think there are some additional things that need to happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure where the echo is coming from. Sorry, guys, we're trying to figure that out. I'm going to add my own comments first, then we'll wrap this up. Very pleased with how this project has moved along as far as changing. You've listened to all the comments. You worked hard. It's much better outcome, better design. I'm going to agree with several of the comments about, I think we can do better than one-story buildings along MLK. I think you can bring your apartment over them or some other kind of, you don't think it's enough retail or commercial can exist. Put some living over them. One story is just too short. That would free up some green space. I'm going to agree with Mr. Parker. I was hopeful there could be more larger apartments, and in going to other cities and hearing about apartment situations, they're reducing parking spaces to 1 per unit in some cases. And if we could reduce the number of physical cars on the site, still allowing for some retail use there, I think there could be a better outcome. We also in this town are really striving for middle housing. I love that you've added some live, work, play and some townhomes, but is there a way to balance and put more of the townhome and or the home ownership, whatever? We've learned about the 2/1 or 1/2 townhome model thing now, and there's just other options that are available out there. And I agree, this is so close to schools that people are going to want to live there and walk back and forth, and that would be a huge advantage, and connect to greenways and the BRT. And as we move towards more BRT options and the autonomous future of cars, we're not going to need nearly those parking spaces. So is there a better way to be thinking forward on that as you're planning out this design? You've heard the word traffic over and over again. We know you know about that. Like that you've got the RCD in there and that you're thinking about greenway and connectivity via pedestrian and that it's oriented towards that. If there's any way to work out some kind of partnership with Shadowwood to your north, I think having a right in, right out only is going to be problematic as people try then come back along Estes to circle around and get in. So is there another option? And I know you're working on it, but if there was another option, it certainly would reduce the concerns that we're all having about the traffic on Estes and the YMCA corner as well, coming in and out of there. So we see that every day. I will say, it lasts for a bit of time for our town. It is definitely a choke point right there. So I agree too. I'd like to see a little bit longer on the affordable housing than 15 years, a little bit more span or range. And maybe you can accomplish that with either larger units or smaller units, whatever. I don't know. There's other models out there that are working a little differently. So can I ask the applicant, did you have anything to respond to? Did you get enough input from what you've heard?
We did.
Dan's always very ungracious with that. Yeah, we heard a lot. So,
no, we're here to be good listeners, and you gave us a lot of information. And the good thing is we know traffic is the big issue, but everybody had really good comments beyond just the traffic. So we will take those to heart and regroup as we always do.
And I'll reiterate, all the comments were great, well received. We also agree on the traffic. We released the TIA, approved it, I think 4 months ago. So we're 100% on board. That's an important element.
Thank you. Yeah, it is an important element for this particular, for most projects in town, but this one in particular, we know it's a crucial element. So
I'll move R7.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Anderson to transmit our comments to the applicant. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Motion is unanimous. Thank you very much. We have next on our agenda an appointment, or going to be designating a voting delegate to the North Carolina League of Municipalities annual conference. And Mr. Bointsey has graciously volunteered to be our voting delegate. To do this, I will need a motion to make that appointment.
I move we appoint Mr. Bointsey as our delegate.
A second. Ooh, lots of seconds, Alan. Good job. It's a motion by Mr. Parker, second by Mr. Nguyen. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The motion is unanimous. I forgot to mention earlier, I know you were very excited to, can you see this? There we go. Tomorrow is the groundbreaking ceremony for the Booker Creek Basin Park. We're doing it virtually. I guess that's why they delivered a trowel to my doorstep this morning. That will be at noon tomorrow. So we're getting started on our Stormwater Basin Park. And this is very, very exciting because the goal is to get it done before hurricane season hits us and to provide, we filmed a video that will be released about this, but just to help remind you all that there will be some trees removed and mature trees as we build this. And then, Amy, can you help mute Hong Bin, please? Thank you. There'll be plants put back in and a trail around there. The plants that we put back in will take some time to grow, but they're specifically going to be suited for being in this kind of environment. So you'll see some construction, you'll see some equipment, but please know that it's going to come back to be a park with the trail, with art, with a viewing station. We're really, really excited. It's going to be very green, and we hope that everyone will come enjoy it. It also will serve a walkway to get between places in the Blue Hill District. So it's going to be really exciting. And so the groundbreaking is tomorrow at noon, virtually. So see you there virtually. Mr. Manager, did you have anything else for us? You ready to go home?
I think we're done for tonight.
Okay, a friendly reminder, we have a closed session tomorrow evening for council to consider qualifications for a personnel appointment. So anyway.
Time is that?
Yeah, 7 p.m. tomorrow night, virtually. 7 p.m. Notices went out. Be there. You have some reading to do before that meeting. You were sent the Dropbox to get into the applications that you need to preview before coming to that meeting. So happy reading, everyone. Good night. Bye.
Good night. I thought you were going to break out the gavel.
I have a trowel, not a gavel.